This might be the last midnight musings in the old. Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett. I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on YouTube. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it? Especially if you love the movies.
There's a company called Hot Toys, and they make these insanely realistic, renderings of characters. They do them for all the Marvel characters or whatever, and they look so much like you. It's disturbing, actually. Like, scary. They look so much like you, but they're tiny. They're like 18 inches or something like that. They actually that's what's crazy about that company is they hand make they carve the mold of
That's crazy.
It's wild.
Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, in case you forgot. Your Duke of Dope Discourse, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your Archbishop of Banterbury, your evangelist of the imagination, and, of course, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am, of course, Robcasting at you. This is Midnight Musings, Dun-dun-dun-dun, 007, the 7th episode of Midnight Musings, and it wouldn't be a show unless I had my compatriot. You've seen her on the channel a lot lately. You know her. She's streaming everywhere. You love her. She has a quarter-scale Mandalorian, and I don't. Welcome. How are you?
I am well, Robert. It's so good to be back on Midnight Musings with you on a Friday. It's back, and I just love it, Robert. There's so much to talk about, Robert.
So much to talk about. I mean, this is probably the last broadcast from the old Robservations. I know it looks like a lot of stuff is here, because there is still. But the moving process has started by the end of this weekend. It's supposed to be done. Sure. That'll happen, but no, it will. It will. So it's been a while since we've done a Midnight Musings. Lael will join us soon, which is very exciting. But there's a lot of crazy, crazy stuff, crazy good stuff, and crazy, insane stuff that happened. That's still happening. We heard today. I mean, I wanted to start and ask you. First of all, I got to ask you: did you see Moon Knight?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Okay, I haven't really, other than on the John Campea show, I haven't really talked to anybody else about it live, and so I've got to ask you: what did you think of the first episode of Moon Knight?
Well, I have to say that it looked beautiful. Like it was a perfectly made episode. But there's a lot going on in this episode. Like, it's action packed. Even there's no slow moments, really. There's a lot to figure out what's going on. And for me, I was just trying to keep track of what was going on. I liked it, but I need an explanation for certain things. And I'm assuming that we're going to see more of an explanation in episode 2. And I almost wonder why they didn't release maybe episodes 1 through 3. So you could get to the point where you're like, Oh, that's what that is. Like I understand, or at least it seems like this gentleman, is kind of in combination with someone else, and it reminded me of Venom a little bit because
Right.
in Venom, there, the character has this other real. It's a real entity that takes over his body. Um, and I love anything that has to do with the Egyptians. So, there's a lot of Egyptian style lore to
How about the
this.
bangles? How do you fall down on the bangles? Did you
Um,
walk like an Egyptian?
Absolutely. It honestly, anything to do with museums and Egyptian religion and history and lore is fascinating. What he's going through is remarkable because is this a spoil? This is a spoiler episode,
Yeah,
Robert.
we spoil the shit out of things on Midnight Musings. Come on now.
Well, the fact that he wakes up with, a tie around his leg and sand around his bed and tape on the door lets us know that he knows there's something unusual about him. And, this is something that what I really think is interesting about it is that I almost wonder whether there are, people out there who are doing that every night for several reasons. Like if you sleepwalk, I always wondered, what do people do who
Oh,
sleepwalk?
when I get tied to the bed, it's usually for something else. So I'm just saying.
Yes, absolutely. But what I also do find very interesting about the episode is that while he becomes sort of possessed with this other entity, he could be anywhere on Earth. It seems like anywhere, and it's like what a transformation for an individual. It's like, it's one thing if you kind of like get possessed, and where he was in the museum and he was familiar with that place, so he knew when he woke up where he would be. But it seems like he wakes up in a lot of places where he doesn't even know where he is in the world.
Right.
And that must be like so unnerving and unsettling. And this other person, Arthur, I think is his name, who is tracking him down, hunting him down for a particular reason. It is a bit of a mystery, but I do love that it's centered around a museum, because I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to museums. So I think it's intriguing, but I do need some more episodes so I can at least make sure I'm getting everything straight. I think that the actual episode itself looks beautiful, like it's perfectly made.
Oh, I absolutely. It's incredibly well made. And another person who has been streaming, but I have yet to hear his opinion on it, is our other co-host, somebody who inexplicably calls me like the smoothest guy on YouTube. This is not true. This is not true. The smoothest guy on YouTube is actually this man that I'm about to introduce, the other co-host of this channel, Mr. Lael Rockwell. Lael,
Hi, Lael.
welcome.
Listen,
Your mic's a little low.
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
but we still need a little bit more volume.
Yeah, just a little more
Let's
volume.
Let's see. How's that? Is that better? Is that better?
I don't know if your
it's
mic's on.
low.
It might be the internal. See,
Yeah.
he's smooth, but technically sometimes, wait do you hear his dulcet tones come in when the mic kicks in.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
I think that's not.
How's that?
Oh,
Much
there we go,
better.
dude. Oh, listen to that.
Okay, there we go. So I had to change the setting because when you turn the computer on, it kind of changes. The
Oh,
setting
yeah.
up. So
Now-
I had to do that.
Can you
So-
just say, hello, everyone?
Hello, everyone. How you doing?
Hi,
Nice.
Lael.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
How you
So-
doing? No. So listen, I. Okay. So no. I'm gonna answer yours first, and then I'm gonna tell you what happened. Just what I was watching. It was. Do you know who Jared Carmichael is?
I do not.
He's a comedian.
Okay.
Black comedian. He was on. If you saw, I think he was on in the first official film where we got a chance to see Mark Wahlberg in a Transformer film. He was a black guy played in one of the Transformer films.
Okay.
With him.
Oh,
he
I
was
know. I
also-
know who he is. Yeah.
Slim, whatever. Yeah. And he had a special on HBO tonight. It came out tonight at 8. So we were sitting down watching it, and it was a more intimate setting. He had it at a club in New York City. It opened up with him basically walking from his apartment or somewhere, or his place, or to the comedy show. It he sat down and he was talking about how, you know, it was about secrets. It was about letting the world know, like, you know, just, you know, secrets that you've held, secrets that his parents held, his father held, stuff like that. So he, you know, went in talking about how his father had, you know, secrets that he was cheating on his mother, his, you know, aunt was doing the same thing, stuff like that, whatever. And then he said how his father, he made his father come out to his mother. I mean, you know, just come out and tell her the truth. And he said after it happened, it made him feel guilty because he knew himself. He was living a lie not only to his parents, himself, and to all of us. And so he used tonight's comedy show live in front of everybody to come out and tell everybody he was gay.
I read about this. In Deadline. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I thought about it and I was like, yo, like, it was the most intimate setting to whereas the comedian had a chance to really interact with the crowd, like in an intimate setting, and they were all sort of like they were, you know, championing him on to, you know, really like letting him know that it's okay. But the biggest thing was he needed that same approval from his mother. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's where the guilt comes in. And also he said the fact that he had lied to everybody about his name. He didn't tell everybody his real name. He said Jared is his middle name, but Rothaniel is his real name.
Wow, okay.
So he named the show. It's crazy because he named the show Rothaniel, but you didn't know that was his real name because you just followed the journey. So it was just so uniquely done. And it made me think, Rob, I was like, you know what? Comedy, we look at it as being, okay, you know, a bunch of people get on stage and they make us laugh and, you know, but it's such an amazing art form, bro. It's such an art form that you can create. Like you have to come. I mean, I hats off to them when they have to write this material. You have to engage with the crowd. You have to be, you know, you're who you are, but at the same time, you kind of like you evolve into something totally different, you know. And it was crazy. Like just watching it tonight was like really, really, really strange. And I guess that's where my mind is. I was like, yo, wow, like he did this. No one knew until tonight.
Right. Well, okay. This is a pretty interesting way to. I was going to start. We were talking about Moon Knight, but this is a really interesting discussion.
No. Let's talk about Moon Knight.
No. Because you brought up the idea of comedy, which leads into what I wanted to talk about. First of all, I just want to say to we've got Justin Jones just joined the channel as a PGS hero.
Hey, Justin.
Justin, thank you. Welcome. Welcome. Fredo Valcaz says, "Oh, nice. They were those are on sale." Yo, sup, Rob? I'm going to see Morbius in a few. Well, Fredo, I hope you like it. I knew it was you. How many times have you heard that in your life? I saw Morbius last night.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about that
later.
And Angel Galvin, thank you for the super chat sticker. I very much appreciate that. So here's the thing. You're talking about comedy. We saw an example of something that happened that we're dealing with the fallout still today, which is what happened on the Academy Awards between Chris Rock, a comedian, and Will Smith. Now, what's interesting, for those of you who might not have heard, Will Smith resigned from the Motion Picture Academy today. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he left because now they can't, the Academy can't do anything. I mean, I guess they could take his Oscar away, which I don't think that they should do. I don't think that they should do it. But, it really, I've heard from a lot of comedians that I know, and comedians are now fearful. There's now an element of fear in the sense that when you can watch somebody, when Will Smith, rightly or wrongly, has normalized that someone can walk up to a comedian and assault them if they say something that a person doesn't like. Now, I've been getting a lot of people. I've been getting all kinds of things. I have people from the black community who've written to me, and they said, listen, Will Smith was defending his wife, and there's been a lot of people, and I've been getting a lot of, because obviously, look at me, I'm not part of the black community, but I can't. I mean, people have asked me to weigh in, and I'm like, I can't see it from that perspective.
Yeah.
I as much as I consider myself a intelligent individual, there's just some perspectives I can't speak to.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have said that's interesting because that is not where I'm coming from. But there's a lot of people that are talking about a man stepping up. You saw Tiffany Haddish. She said, "Hey, Will Smith was protecting his wife, stepping up and protecting his wife." So that's been really interesting. But what I found interesting is that Chris Rock. I've loved Chris Rock as a comedian for the better part of 30 years. All the way back when Chris Rock was Mookie in like New Jack City. Was he Mookie? Was it Pookie? Pookie. Mookie was Spike Lee and Do the Right Thing. That was Do the Right Thing. Pookie. He was Pookie in New Jack City, which was like what, 87? Something like that. Maybe it was 80. I mean,
late
80s.
80,
something
like
89,
88, 89.
Yeah. Mario Van Peebles directed that. And Chris Rock back then playing a crack addict who goes on the straight and narrow with the cops. I mean, I've been a huge fan of Chris Rock's, and now he's 57 years old.
Yeah,
and so he tells a joke, and he gets now. That to me is a dangerous precedent. But so none of this was good. There's nothing that is good about any of this. But I'm curious, since you brought up comedy.
Yeah.
We now live in a world, like I grew up watching everybody from Lenny Bruce to Richard Pryor to, all of these comics that were pushing boundaries.
Yeah.
And now I feel we live in an infantilized world where everybody's so worried about their own feelings. And like, I don't understand the concept of safe spaces. The earth is not a safe space. You go too deep underwater, you die. You go too high in the mountains, you die. There's no place on earth that's safe. So this idea that we've created college students, ideological safe spaces. Why? What? Are ideas now dangerous to you? Because we live in this weird, strange time when everybody feels that they have to be comfortable all the time. And the whole point of great comedy was it pushes boundaries. It makes us look back at ourselves and question who and what we are. And there's that recognition where we can laugh at the absurdity of life. But are we living in a world? I mean, we've seen it on college campuses. Comedians have been afraid to go. Now we watched somebody didn't like what you said about my wife. Is comedy too dangerous? Are we going to live in a post-comedy age? Like you just said, you watched a comic tonight come out, which is a very brave thing to do within the confines or context of a comedy show.
Yeah, very brave, yeah.
Is comedy something, should we be fearful of comedy? Because I think our society needs it.
Did you want to go first?
No, go ahead. I want to hear what you guys have to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's my thing. Because there's a couple of things I want to touch on. Because I got caught in a backlash for this week. Being a black man, being
Wait, what?
Yeah, exactly.
No.
A lot of people didn't know. They probably didn't know that I was a black man. But being a black man in the community, there's a lot of things that I gotta, I had to really defend. Both me and Toya sort of had to be on the defense this week for our thoughts. I looked at the Academy Awards in so many different ways. Knowing the history of, my culture, your Sidney Poitiers, your Harry Belafonte, your Hattie McDaniels, your Red Foxes, your people who've, have shaped my energy, my imagery of what Black Hollywood is.
Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor,
and how they have struggled with a space to really have certain conversations, to be a part of something.
Yep.
So this has been a narrative for years. Fast forward to, and like I said, I don't want to go through history, but fast forward to now, the past Sunday, we had D Nice, who was the DJ at the function. He just hit a milestone. I think he hit like 5 million or something, like millions, 500 million. I don't know, like almost a billion or so. I don't know, followers. Like he's there. So he got a chance his first time to DJ at the Academy Awards. You had two conductors, I believe, that were there as part as the musical selection. You had two females, one part of the LGBTQ, and both black, that were hosts.
And the show, by the way, was produced overall, was the first black produced Academy Awards.
Will Packard.
And his team.
So got a chance to see that. And then, you had, Samuel L. Jackson, his wife, who basically, so we can honestly say that the imagery from this was giving us a space to really speak.
And the award that was being given out was to Questlove for his documentary, Summer of Soul.
And that's where I'm going to get to. That's where I wanted to get to. So looking at it, and when I remember when it first happened, like we were sitting back, me and Toya were sitting back and we watched it and we were like, nah, that's a gag. But then what happened was it paused and it went black. It came back on and it was like they were fumbling to try to figure out how they were going to edit this segment. And then we knew from Chris Rock's response that he was trying to keep it together, which I think he did a phenomenal job with keeping it together and moving forward, even though he was even taken back by the whole situation. Mind you, he was there at that particular time to give his friend an award that he participated in. Anybody who's actually seen Summer of Soul, Chris Rock was on the Summer of Soul. One reason why is because he's also an executive producer of the project.
Mm-hmm.
So he was giving his friend an award. Questlove's first Academy Award. Okay? First award for a documentary.
About something that happened in Black history that was incredibly important that most people don't know about.
That no one knew about, and it was like lost tapes. So it was never out there. So he had a chance to do it, and it was the first done, and he won an award for it. Okay, so first of all, I want to say that we know who Chris Rock is, and we know the proper. I mean, us as us when we go to these comedy shows, you have to know proper comedy etiquette. You sit in the front, you're going to get roasted.
Right. Yeah.
If you sit in the back, then there's no conversation. If you sit up in a scalpel, then you don't have to worry about anybody. You're way up. But if you're in the front, you're going to get roasted no matter what. So you got to be best dressed. You just got to basically take it. The joke that Chris Rock said was the corniest. It was lame, and it wasn't even as strong. It was a weak joke. It was weak. It was nothing that I felt as though garnished the behavior.
Yeah, and I also think it was in his mind because it was not scripted. And that the first of all, Demi Moore looked pretty good in G.I. Jane.
Yo,
I mean, Jada Pinkett Smith, she's looking
literally.
I mean, she is an astonishingly beautiful woman. She looked
phenomenal.
Great. She looked
phenomenal.
Great. Even with her hair shaved, and it looked like it was. I don't think that he was thinking alopecia or anything. It was a fashion choice that she made, bold nonetheless. But when he looked at her, he made a movie joke because they were at the Academy Awards.
Exactly. And it was at the Academy Awards. And mind you, what was the movie about? It was about a woman who defied the odds. She defied the odds despite what they thought. She defied the odds and showed how strong she was. So when I'm hearing that, I'm like, okay, there's so many different ways that you can actually look at it. And I thought that it was a corny joke, but it wasn't nothing that garnished the behavior. We all know that Will Smith and Jada Pinkett's story and their life and their history and their marriage has been out. It's been out in the open. It's been part of the platform. We know that. Looking at it and looking at his posture and his demeanor and his mannerisms when the joke was there, he laughed, and we saw that he laughed.
Yeah.
We looked at her, and she didn't look like she was that mad, but she just looked like she was just dismissive of the joke. Now look, I don't know, all of us who have actually companions, whether you're black, white, whatever, you're going to protect your wife nonstop. But the thing is, when you're protection, when we say protection can be viewed for so many different ways. Protection is not only from a physical standpoint or verbal standpoint, But you have to also be protective of not just your wife, but your family and the foundation that you've actually established. You feel me? So what I mean by that is you have to think my reaction versus reality. My reaction, if I go up on this stage and do something, that is going to haunt me. All right. I stand to basically win an Academy Award. I'm going to be noticed by my peers. I'm going to be noticed by so many individuals. Not that opportunities haven't been there, but even more opportunities are going to come and they're going to flourish because this is who I am. If I basically sit here and all I have to do is, if I acknowledge that joke, lean over, look at my wife, rub her head and kiss it and say, you know what, regardless, she still looks beautiful. She's my wife. Your joke meant absolutely nothing. Even if he walked on stage, right? Grabbed Chris Rock's hand, shook it, and whispered in his ear, yo, like, listen, this is the situation with my wife. I didn't really take too kindly of it because you know, whatever. And Chris Rock, and I think he would have said, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. That was my apology, whatever. Even if Will Smith had to go on stage.
Yeah.
He was like, what, how many meters? Like 30 to 45 meters away from Chris Rock from where they were sitting?
Yeah. And he came back and continued. Started screaming, you know.
Exactly. Here's my thing. And this is what I felt, and I still stand by it. It was in poor taste, number one. Number two, for everybody who fought before that moment to have that space on stage, anybody who looks like me to have the opportunity to be at a venue when we can actually say that we fought hard to get here and we are finally here. For every 2 steps that we have taken in history, Will Smith, you just knocked us 13 steps backwards. And I say that because people are like, no, how you going to basically say, no, you can protect your wife, but you have to protect your wife and be smart about it. At the end of the day, if you have a problem with what Chris Rock said, you step behind stage, you walk off the stage. After y'all done, have the conversation. Whatever ensues at that point, it wasn't done live. It's a verbal exchange I might have away from it, but it wasn't done live where everybody can see, so everybody can speculate and say what they want. At least at that particular time, you're at another safe venue. It's not live. The Academy probably won't come down on you hard like that. But what you did visibly in front of everybody not only hurt yourself, but it hurt so many people who believed in you. And now it does open that door where, like, no one feels safe. As a comedian, no one feels safe. Number one, it's the pushback already is based off of what has been said. And if a comedian says something that a person doesn't like, they're going to go back in history and look at him and say, okay, this person said this person said that. So being a comedian, right now we're taking food, and society is taking food and money out of these people's pockets right now. And they're only doing their job.
Yeah.
So this is my problem with it. And I like Will Smith. Don't get me wrong. I've loved Will Smith for years because he's done a fantastic job. His performances have been on point.
I'm not giving up my Hitch Blu-ray.
Nah,
not doing it.
And hell no. And I honestly think that he acted out in the moment. He was frustrated. He was like, yo, I need to get my street cred back. People keep looking at me like I'm soft, like I'm a punk. So I need my cred back. He went on stage and did what he did, and it was in poor taste. And I would have thought that basically it's not about just him protecting her, but it's about them protecting each other and how they look in the public eye. That's what I'm thinking about. When I say that, I get pushed back from my own people, Rob. That's the problem. I got pushed back because the thing is, violence isn't always the answer. It is never the answer. I don't care what you, black, white, Hispanic, Indian, Native American, whatever. Violence is not always the reaction that we should have. And we see that because of that, this is where we are sitting right now. And he's forced to resign from the Academy. Now, Rob, let me ask you a question, because when I heard this, I wasn't sure. So if he resigns from the Academy, does that necessarily mean he can't be nominated for, or he can't be up in the running for a award? Does that mean that, because now, like, the thing is, I'm thinking that, does this cast a shadow, even though he has his own production company? Are studios going to want to work with him? Are agencies going to want to work with him? Are they going to feel safe doing that? Like, what type of position? Because you being in knowing about these things, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah. From what I understand now, it does not make him ineligible to win an award,
right,
if he's nominated. Now, there is a newsletter that I frequently read called The Ankler.
Yes.
Richard Rushfield publishes this, and he published an article. It actually is dated tomorrow, but I just got this, and I want to read some of this article because it's interesting. So it's got a few points. Point number 1. Will Smith is a goddamn genius, or his publicist is. All the while, the Academy dithers and takes 3 weeks to investigate and consider appropriate response, check with lawyers, no doubt, comb the bylaws to see what guidance it gives for an act of violence by one member against another during the ceremony, consider precedents, take the temperature of the membership, etc., etc., perhaps even appoint a blue ribbon panel, why don't you? While they're busy doing all of that important investigatory work, Will Smith steps up and says, "Investigate me? I'm out of here." The Academy had one chance to redeem itself by acting clearly and decisively in response to this, making up for what they failed to do on the night with some fuzzy repercussions later. Of course, they were never going to do that. And now that the rug has been pulled out from under them, Will Smith has slapped the Academy's face once again. Number 2. Of course, this completely misses the point. He gave up his membership, so what? What does that mean? He's not going to get free screeners and be able to vote? He'll have to pay for his ticket to the museum? To dollars and cents this, within the dramatic genre, Will Smith's value is at least partially as a potential awards contender. Would King Richard have gotten made if it were ineligible for awards? So if the Academy still has a chance to show that they have an ounce of seriousness here and do something that will clearly and unmistakably show they do not stand for this. You know the difference between a real punishment and a winking joke punishment when you see one. A year of ineligibility for awards falls into the category of winking joke punishment. Apple, for instance, could, with the press of a button, move their own Will Smith release back a year. Apparently they have a movie coming out with him. The Academy Award for the Best Picture went to Apple this year for Coda. Serious is something along the lines of 20 years ineligibility. Lifetime ineligibility. If the punishment doesn't take your breath away when you hear it, then all the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences spin to follow, all the furrowed brows on Wilshire won't make it real. And everyone will know that, even if they pretend not to. Perhaps the most ghoulish spectacle of this week has been the revolving backstage story of what really happened, and how the Academy took a firm, resolute stand. It's just that Will said no. On this part, I'm truly willing to extend a fair amount of benefit of the doubt here to the Academy. This is not something there was any roadmap for, and in the heat of battle, with many fraught issues, and Chris Rock, Hollywood Zelensky, not wanting to press the issue, I'd like to say I would have been firm and decisive, but I can see in the moment how a well-intentioned person would freeze. It's not ideal, but life comes at you fast. What is less forgivable is the retrospective claims of iron spines and throwing anyone within reach under the bus. The backstage accounts have produced multiple evolving and revolving tales of the Academy's leaders asking Smith to leave, which was actually asking his publicist to ask him to leave, if that even happened. I haven't seen anyone outside of the Academy confirm it. As I say, you know an unserious response when you see one. He didn't leave. He wasn't removed. I'm sure the issue of removing him wasn't even floated. He stayed on to receive his prize to a standing ovation and went on to rule the dance floor at an open-armed and fawning Vanity Fair party. After which the Academy convened an emergency meeting for 3 days later and took 3 days to let it slip out that, oh yes, we definitely asked him to leave. But you know what, he didn't want to, so what could we do? Well, I guess we'll have 3 weeks to investigate. You know, for all the supercilious superiority the Academy rains down on the Hollywood foreign press, it's quickly showing itself to be just another celeb glad-handling, elite-enabling stop on the red carpet circuit. Slightly glossier, but with the same hollow core. Remember that next year when we all hear the harumphing about the fake award shows. And then, this is interesting, is there a network in the house? The thing in the end here that no one seems to talk about, it's not the Academy's show. It's ABC's show. Neither Will Packer nor David Rubin get to tell ABC what they have to put on their airwaves. Just as if someone runs naked on the field at the Super Bowl, the NFL doesn't get to tell whoever is airing it, you have to carry our entire feed without any omissions. So where was ABC during all this? More to the point, where was Disney? And here's where you get to the problem of having someone at the helm who doesn't come from production and has never been in a mile of live entertainment production becomes a problem. As much as I think the Bob Iger, Bob Chapek comparisons are generally unfair and misleading, in this case there's something to it. It's hard to believe that Bob Iger, who made his way up overseeing Olympics coverage, would have sat on his hands while this was going on and not put in a call to the booth, to the Academy, and said, "Get that man off my airwaves." So where was Disney television leadership, Bob Chapek, Peter Rice, and Dana Walden, during all of this? Did they voice any concerns about what was happening in their broadcast? Number 5, the invisible booze. For that matter, just to throw in a little conspiracy thinking here, I've heard now from several people in the room who've told me that when Smith won his Oscar, there was a loud, constant booing heard. Why couldn't we hear any of that on the broadcast? Is it possible that the folks in the booth instinctively reached to sweeten the audio? And while we're at it, we'll once again ask the Academy to release the full coverage of Smith during those missing seconds before the slap, the natural audio and the full Will Smith tape. If you take this seriously, it's time for a full accounting. So, it goes on. But I thought all of that was really interesting. The thing is, and this is the summation, this didn't happen in a vacuum for the Academy. This isn't an organization where everything has been going gangbusters and then this happened. And it's not an industry that has a lot of great moments to point to lately either. This is a disaster on the pile of mounting disasters. The biggest in many ways, but there's competition. I go back to the Chinese proverb. When there is order under the heavens, big problems become small problems, and small problems disappear. When there is chaos under the heavens, small problems become big problems, and big problems become disasters. There are scenarios in which the slap could have been a shocking moment, but ultimately a small problem. In a world where there's leadership, where the Academy and the industry knew what their purposes were, where they stood for something, in the nihilistic tumult of the constant fire hose, everything spins out to the worst place. This feels like a denouement, a final cry of a terrible moment. But if the industry can't find its soul, be sure that the worst will come, and probably come soon.
I think Rushfield's article surmises a lot of things that a lot of people have been asking questions about. For example, after this entire incident happened, a lot of people had comments about, well, where was security? And, you know, why wasn't he escorted out of the building? And these sort of comments. And of course, we all know that there's a heavy amount of security, not just in the building, but from the local, LA County, as well as bodyguards. There's a ton of security there. And the fact of the matter is that no one was expecting something like this to occur. And doesn't mean that going forward, they might have to put a barrier between the people on the stage and the people on the ground. Who knows what they're going to do? They might just have to do it just to save face, to say that everyone is safe at the Academy Awards. No one has to show up and worry about getting slapped or punched or whatever someone decides to do. And it is very different from, let's say, the person who streaked, 20 or 30 years ago and kind of went on their way. A lot of people have different interpretations for these unexpected events that happen at the awards. But never have we had an Academy Awards that had such a great deal of expectation when compared to the previous year. In the previous year of 2021, we had hardly any, people appearing because we were in the middle of a pandemic. And there were comments that were made by people who were hosting it saying, well, we know as Hollywood, performers that you don't want to hear us tell you what you should be thinking anymore. You don't want messages in our films. And it was like, that was a disgrace in itself. Only to have, an Academy Awards presented this year that not only had, an assault that took place, But we also had performances, like, for example, in the Encanto segment, for We Don't Care, we Don't Speak About Bruno, which was like a Billboard #1 song, children's movie, musical, incredibly popular, worldwide. They decided to have performers in the performance who were sexually explicit performers. And parents were shocked at what they were seeing, but it didn't occur to anybody that might not be an appropriate person to put in a segment about, a children's story in a children's song. There were a lot of missteps going on. And, whether it's a situation of not being able to manage this or thinking that this is a good idea, from one point to the other, the fact remains is that I think that when Will Smith went up to accept his award, he was afraid of pissing off the Academy. And he knew for him that was the main focus. And I can understand why the Academy would be pissed off at this. But the Academy's approach to this is that they're not there to police everybody. This is not what their show is about. They don't wake up in the morning thinking, well, if someone would get into a fight, this is not at all what they should have to deal with. And whether there were laws or problems or things put in place in their a mission statement that says if somebody does some behavior that's unacceptable, this is what happens, is completely irrelevant to them. They don't even want to be bothered with this stuff. They had to put it in there because of unusual circumstances. But honestly, all they care about is promoting the films for next year, getting exposure for different things. Like, for example, the fact that Quest Knight's film got completely overshadowed, that Coda got completely overshadowed, all these important things that happened that we couldn't even speak about because of this entire thing. What they could have done was kind of just block this whole thing out, and we didn't even need to see any of this. They made an effort to block out the curse words, but not block out the slap. And I have to wonder personally, what decision was made as you as a broadcaster would go ahead and say, yeah, I'm going to block out fuck you, asshole, dick, cock, whatever you want to say. You don't want the American public to hear this, but you're perfectly fine in letting millions of Americans see somebody assault someone else. Like, wouldn't you have blocked that out too? Or maybe stepped forward? That's what I'm really curious about, is why. Why did they allow that to be shown?
I would say this, though. I think at first, because nothing like this had ever happened before, people didn't know, and I honestly believe this, they didn't know if this was a bit, if this was something that was organized in advance. Because even when I was watching, I'm like, wait, what? And it was so I think that there wasn't, people really didn't know. I believe they honestly didn't know because this had never happened before. But you're right. I mean, of course, it all went out live. The thing is, it went out live around the rest of the world. There was no broadcast delay. But Lael, there's something you were saying. You were speaking very eloquently about the black community. And I think when the story of the black community in America over the last 3 or 4 years has been going through, there's been a lot of things happening. Whether it's it was Ibrahim X and writing about critical race theory. You have what happened with George Floyd and the BLM riots. And there's been a lot of this tumult in the black community. And here's a night where you just said, I mean, just a few years ago, Oscars So White, that hashtag, it was a big deal. And now, like you said, we're here. We've arrived. We set the table, and we have members of our own community winning awards, making things about. I mean, King Richard is about the triumph of two black women who come from a nuclear family, a family where a mother and father were present in their lives and pushed them to become superstars. And then you have Questlove celebrating the art. I mean, Questlove's the biggest Prince fan in the world. I love Questlove. And the Summer of Soul is celebrating black culture and literally a festival, a Harlem festival that people had forgotten about because it was overshadowed by Woodstock,
Exactly.
So, and like you eloquently pointed out, for that to be tainted by this moment, 2 steps forward, 13 steps backward.
Yeah.
Do you think that in the larger discussion, because I see our culture being torn apart at every level, and it's becoming tribal. It's becoming, and the one thing about the Academy Awards, we've all become it's so weird. We become the most inward, navel-gazing culture where everybody's the star of their own TikTok videos or reality shows or YouTube streams. And yet the Academy Awards, there was still, you can be as cynical as you want about Hollywood, but when I was a kid growing up, I watched the Academy Awards every year for the magic. For the magic of movies. We still believe in the magic of movies. And I'll tell you something. Will Smith was fucking great in King Richard.
Yeah, he was.
You know,
He was
and
phenomenal.
he was phenomenal. Whether he's been in Independence Day or Enemy of the State or what was it, 7 Pounds or whatever.
Pursuit of Happiness, stuff like that.
I've loved Will Smith. And, you know, I've actually met him personally once, and I've never heard, in terms of his work ethic, I've never heard a bad word about him.
Yeah.
You know, and so how do you think that this incident is going to be looked at in the wider discussion of race and privilege? Because let's make no mistake, Will Smith lives in a very privileged environment.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think it all means, like contextually? Because I don't know, but I've been thinking a lot about it.
Yeah.
Like, what does it mean in the grander scheme? You know, talk about people are dying. I listened to this story about a woman, a 28-year-old mother of 2, dealing with what was going on in Mariupol in Ukraine. And I think to myself, who gives a fuck about the Academy Awards? But it's all part of the same continuum. Yeah. You know, daily life, human life on one end has always been horrors beyond imagining, and the other end has been triumphant glory. And it's you can't compartmentalize it. It's all happening at the same time. Yeah. And now we're trying to compartmentalize everything, and it's so weird.
Yeah. You know what? The biggest thing now is I look at it like, okay, so now we got to erase everything off the chalkboard and start from scratch again and come up with a plan, because it's like I'm gonna tell you this right now. If they do Oscars next year, won't be the same. It won't.
No,
it definitely won't, and it's not going to be viewed the same way. And I guarantee you, look, there's already memes. We've probably seen more memes of Will Smith this week than we've ever seen, you know, any other meme in so long. Like, there's so many remix memes, stuff like that. It's going to be on the tips of conversation almost every other day. We already know that next year at the Oscars, this will be the butt of all jokes. Someone's going to make that joke. I mean, if you have like Richie Gervais or something like that on stage, Gervais on stage, then he'll probably make, you know, some type of remark about it. Here's the thing. What this did, and I really saw this week, Rob, is it literally divided a culture. It did. It literally,
and that's something that we're not hearing enough about.
Culture. Nah, it literally divided a culture, because I really sat back and heard this all week. Well, yes, he should have protected the black woman, because the black man hasn't been protecting the black woman for this long. Yes, what he did was right, regardless of what the situation was. And I just brought this up, and I was like, okay, let's flip the script a bit, and I just want your honest opinion. As a woman, you're up for an Academy Award. As a black woman, you're up for an Academy Award. You stand to win. You've also been offered $60 million to play in a major film. You know you're up for that. A woman walks out on your stage and says, oh, your husband's knees are ashy. Are you going to stand up and go up on stage and smack her because she said that? And some of the people that I heard said, no, I probably wouldn't do that. No, whatever. Okay. But yet, you said that you approve of the simple fact that you're accepting the fact that he went on stage and did what he did. Okay. So hypothetically, you accept that as a woman, that you would allow him to go up on that stage and do that. What if Chris Rock was licensed to carry and was on stage with a gun, and when Will Smith turned around, he blew his motherfucking head off, right? So I just wanted to. So are you going to accept it as a woman that you've lost your husband, and now you have children that have watched this, that are traumatized? You yourself Are you going to accept that responsibility? So this is what I'm looking at. You got to look at it from every corner.
Oh,
from
yeah.
from all vantage points, because this is the thing. Like, bro, we still, as a black, this is my thing. As a black man, bro, literally, I am telling you. And the thing is, I don't even want to make this about race, because after I say this, I'm going to move on from it. The thing is we in my own community, Rob, I'm hearing protect the black woman, which I believe, if you are married in a relationship, engaged, it doesn't matter what. As a man, hell yes, you're supposed to protect the person that you're with and make sure that there no harm comes before her. Did Chris Rock come out on the stage and smack your wife? Did he basically pick her up and choke her? Did he do anything that warranted that smack? No, he did not. He said a poor, weak ass joke, and it didn't garnish that behavior. It didn't. So protect has to be, you got to look at it because protection, you got to look at it from a larger perspective. Anyway, I'm saying this because it's always protect. But like, yes, who's protecting me? Like, who is basically protecting me from just life in general? You're not looking at that. And that's the biggest problem. What happened that night literally has divided a culture. And I think it's even divided us. It's divided all of us right now because there's so many different things. Because I was talking to a friend of mine. He was like, and this is Rob, this is crazy, because we thought about this. Me and a friend of mine, one of my best friends, this week, we're friends with a guy who you know, like the studio that I work at. His name is Derek.
Okay.
So he messaged us this week and he was like, "Hey guys, I mean, it's been quiet, whatever. What's been going on? How's everybody going?" He's like, "All right, cool. It's just, just been a slow, period right now. Got a lot going on, other projects that I'm working on, but I'll be there." We just talked about it. Now, what happens in the midst of that? Like, what happens is when somebody needs to spark conversation, if they want to keep the conversation going, they'll mention something to them is just completely harmless. So they'll talk about the situation, but to us, it holds much more weight. Now, the thing is, he's white and but he's cool. But at the same time now, it becomes a situation now that some people will feel uncomfortable if a white guy or a white woman talks about it.
Right.
Because then it becomes an argument. Like, why would you even talk about it? You don't know what goes on.
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
No, but this is humanity. It doesn't matter who it is. It's humanity that we're talking about right now. Yes, we're going through a lot of shit. Like I will be the first to acknowledge it. But right now, like in a country that has been divided for so many years, one moment has just made it worse almost again, bro.
Yeah, I know.
And that's the terrible. Like, look, I know we'll rebound from it. Like, we'll rebound from this. This once, look, and Rob, you said this shit on the show, and I was like, Rob has a tendency to say shit that I've been thinking, because you said it. And the night before I told Toya, and we agreed. If anybody wins out of this right now, it's Chris Rock, because I bet you any amount of money, HBO, Netflix, Hulu, anybody called him up and was like, "Yo, you want to do a special? We'll give you this much money." And he's probably sitting back right now looking at those numbers like, damn, who should his agent is probably like, you can do this, you can get away with this here, you can talk. Like, literally, he's gonna make some bread because people want to know what he thinks. And even at his comedy show, because he just had a comedy show a few days ago.
Yep.
And if you heard the audio, he was like, "So I'm not going to talk about that now. I just have to write some stuff. I just want to do comedy." He said, "But I'm not going to talk about that. Maybe at another show." So he already knows that he's preparing and people want to hear what he has to say. And I guarantee you it's going to sell out and he's going to make millions. So to that Will Smith, congratulations. You just made that man millions of dollars at the expense of dividing people, but you just made him some more money.
And
that's what I'm saying. Like, it's crazy, bro. Right now, it's nuts. Everything that's happening right now.
It's well, also, but Chris Rock for the better part of almost 3 decades, he's always been a comedian that has addressed social issues, especially in the black community. And I mean, this plays right into a long legacy of comedy. By the way, I wanted to read a few things. Our friend in New Zealand, RRTNZ, says, "That was an epic rant from Mmmm. I think we should take a moment and give the lady a standing ovation."
Oh, thank you.
There you go. And
Thank you, RNT.
cheers to the Robtocracy. Bob, Lael, and Michaelito, our favorite Michaelito, says, Lael, thank you for talking real talk.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you very much, bro.
El Necron says, wife said, wow, Robservations cleaned up. She used to see you during the pandemic. Well, I haven't gone anywhere. I just haven't been around the last month. But tell your wife hello for me. Darth Plato says, Rob, could you take a moment to explain what being a member of the Academy actually means and how resigning from the Academy, what that means? Well, I'm not a member of the Academy. Basically, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences is just what it says. It's an academy that promotes the art of motion pictures. And what happens is you have to be invited into the Academy. I think you have to be nominated or the Academy votes. And when you become a member, usually you get asked because of the work that you've done. And then depending on your discipline, when you're invited into the Academy, then you become a voting member of the Academy. So like what most people don't know is that all of the awards at the Academy Awards are voted on by other members of the Academy that are in the same discipline. So if you're an actor, you get to vote for an actor. If you're a sound designer, you vote for sound design. If you're an editor, you vote for editorial. And then everybody gets to vote for Best Picture. So that's how the Academy works. And for the most part, I mean, it celebrates the art form. Now, there was a big push, obviously, the last 10 years. There's been a lot of talk of race, and so and the fact that the Academy, the voting membership, of the Academy, a lot of them were predominantly white. But our culture has been predominantly white, and it's changing all the time. So the Academy, like anything else, was a reflection of what went on. I mean, if you talk about what does the black community represent, 13% of the American population or something. The Asian community is small. So it's not like the Academy was. It's just, and when you think about the demographics of the United States, think about how many people that want to even get into film. It's very small. It's not like there's everybody. All these people want to get in. If you want to make movies, no one's stopping you. It's just really, 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 really hard to make movies, and much less make movies that are good that anybody wants to see. I mean, when Spike Lee made She's Gotta Have It, you had a man coming out and making a film with a new emerging voice no one had ever heard before. But no one was telling Spike Lee, you can't make this movie. He made this great low-budget indie film and exploded on the indie film scene in the mid-'80s with something no one had ever seen before. And that was great. That's how everyone's talking about, well, you can't, look, man, with the technology that exists now, anyone can make a movie. The problem is making a good movie is incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult. So most people don't do it. Yeah. But so the Academy, it's getting better because more and more people of all kinds are realizing, yeah, you know what? I can make a movie. I can use phones to make a movie. But so the Academy has been changing, just like our culture has been changing, which is and that's what I believe that the United States was on a good path. We were actually evolving. There was a naturally occurring, kind of like when the Civil War was fought, the Republicans and Lincoln said, no, we're not going to believe in slavery. The Democrats wanted to keep that going. And someone said no. And then we've always been progressing in this country. There have been times where someone said, let's bring back the Marshall Act. We've spent so much more money. There's been constant change throughout American history for the better. Has it happened as fast as people want? No. But now we have same-sex marriage. 25 years ago we didn't. And so everything is changing, which I think is good, and so is the Academy. But ultimately the Academy is supposed to celebrate the motion picture arts and sciences. That's what it's for. That's it. Now, the funny thing about it is it's a prestigious thing, but it's still just a club. Nothing happens. If you're not part of the Academy, it's no big deal. Will Smith can still star in movies, and I think he will. I mean, look, so he hit a dude in anger. Like John Campea says, you can't judge somebody by their worst day. I think Will Smith has been under an incredible amount of pressure on a number of different levels, and just because he's a rich celebrity doesn't mean he doesn't feel pressure.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes, and also, I think Will and Chris will settle this. This is between them.
that's
It's not
what should
between
have.
us.
That's what
We
should have
have nothing
happened.
to do. Yeah, we have nothing to
Yeah.
do with this. This is not my struggle, nor should it be anybody else's. You shouldn't be, like wrapping your head around what's going to happen. It doesn't have anything to do with us. It's their personal issue
Yeah.
that they have to deal with, and they will work it out. They're two grown men who've known each other for a very long time. Don't worry about it. They will work this out, figure out how to go forward. What I was concerned about mainly was just that sometimes when an assault takes place, the county can get involved and decide to press charges.
Yeah.
But this may be something that they say, it's not worth us even doing that now.
Yeah.
Chris doesn't want to press charges, and what have you. And that's how they're going to work it out. It's going to work out between them. They're still going to be friends. It's not going to be like they'll never speak again. And Chris Rock will probably tell more jokes about Jada Pinkett and, Will Smith. So that's not actually going to go away.
No,
He's
you're
just gonna do it behind a plexiglass.
Yes.
I mean, look, the thing that was wrong here is that the anger and the justification of violence against another person, we are normalizing this. And we've been doing it a lot in our culture.
Yeah.
Like we're bringing back frontier justice. And because of the rise of social media, somehow we're normalizing this. This was the problem. The worst thing that happened, despite all the for the black community, that's one thing. And you're right. I mean, there's all kinds of stories to be written and analysis to be made. But let's take away race. Let's just talk about human beings. We're all one race. We're all human beings. One human being laying their hands on another human being
Is wrong.
because they got mad. That shows a lack of self-control. And you know what? Let's push it even further. Like you brought up, Lael, what if Chris Rock was carrying... I mean, the fact that Will Smith did this at this kind of an event that's being broadcast around the world, think about what was going on, the lack of judgment. Like unfettered, I don't know if it was anger. I don't know if he's been emasculated because he had to talk about his open marriage on television and interviews and whatever, if this has been years brewing up. But imagine the pathology that was going on in his mind at that particular moment that made him walk up. He's an actor. His job is to be in front of cameras. He's very aware. There's millions. There's a lot of cameras that are picking up what he was doing. He had all of that time to think as a man who's had cameras pointed at him for over 30 years. When he walked out onto that stage, he knew exactly where he was. He knew exactly what he was doing. He had that, to me, that was a complete lack of self-control.
Yeah.
That was somebody who our justice system does not take this is when people snap. They snap in anger, passion, whatever. They beat up their wives, they kill somebody, whatever it is that they do. What he displayed was a complete lack of self-control. And then not only that, he went and committed a violent act, then went back to his seat and doubled down on it by screaming obscenities in a room full of his peers.
Yeah.
Like he was so the thing that was, I think that's not, people aren't really talking about is how far around the bend he was. Like this guy was completely out of control. And the question you have to ask, you have to ask yourself, where does that end? I think what he displayed was something you can't sit there and go, well, he'll never do that again. I'm like,
You don't know that.
yeah, I mean, this was about as extreme as it gets for somebody, for him, rather than, killing somebody. And, Chris Rock, I'm not saying he should have killed her, but I understand.
Yeah.
That was a comedy routine that Chris Rock himself had done. And I'm sure, and we saw, and this is, we cannot forgive this because luckily no one got really hurt. But how far away, does that anger still seethe within him? Because that was a real display of somebody completely out of control.
Like just losing complete control.
And he is sort of like he's not America's sweetheart. He's not a girl, but, he's become sort of like, let's say an example of America's golden boy. I don't know if I'm even saying this right, but let's just say he kind of represents, America for so many of us, especially with some of the roles that he's played. And I'm sure that image that people are associated with him has somewhat been shaken by what they witnessed. Even for, it was what, a fraction of a second that it took place, it still, rattled a lot of people, including myself. So that's something else to consider. And Robert, was there a super chat from Mikey Lito? Did you see?
Yeah, there was another one. I was going backwards. Mikey says, I do edgy humor. When you do edgy humor, you have to do the joke. You never know how an audience is going to react, so you have to do the joke. And, it's not like someone doesn't know who Chris Rock is or know his... People know... The second episode of the American version of The Office, called Diversity Day, is all about Steve Carell doing Chris Rock's routine and being called on by HR. They have to do an intervention about a guy like Steve Carell, talking about Chris Rock's one of his more famous routines at work. Chris Rock is that ingrained in pop culture.
Yes.
So it's not like, normally just shine that on, man. Like, it's fine. We'll talk about it later. We'll deal with it at the after party.
Here's the thing. It's just I'm looking at stolen moments. Like I said, we talk about the moment that was stolen from Questlove.
Yeah.
And how emotional he was about the simple fact that it was the summer soul. He had wished his father was there, to basically see and witness something like that, because his father was there when this took place. And it was like a full circle. I look at the simple fact that now you had Serena Williams and her sister that were there. You had both the girls who basically played the role. You think people are going to actually remember them? Or if they see him, the conversation is going to be about the Academy Award that was won about their father? No. The first thing that they talk about, or any reporter is going to talk about, is, well, how did you feel about what Will Smith did? That's going to follow him. So you've taken a moment away from them. And that's the thing is, it takes, look, if you don't listen, and my pops always said, like, seriously, if you don't basically want the world to know anything about your life, if you don't put it out there and don't display it for everybody to see, like, literally. And him and his wife made that decision to talk about their infidelities, to talk about basically the relationship that she carried on. Those things were there. And that it will be the butt of all jokes. It will be memed. It's going to be a lot of things that are going on. Now, mind you, Regina Hall had made a joke before that happened when she brought everybody on stage. And I think that lit the fire right there as well. And that became something that, now, listen, I didn't expect Tiffany Haddish to agree with it. I felt as though she would agree with what took place. And the reason why I say that is because, come on, man, she's in a movie. She was in a movie with Jada Pinkett. They both did Girls Trip together.
Yeah.
So I expected that. I expected for her to say that. There was no doubt in my mind. But I just think that cooler heads could have prevailed. And the thing is, it's not about him protecting her. It's about them both protecting each other. And knowing that the weight of what they did has now affected a culture the way it has. And I'm like, like, at this particular point now, I'm not going to say that we have to start all over, but it's just like Black Widow. We got to wipe the red off the ledger right now. We have to. You know what I mean? Because it's out there now. This has basically been visibly seen. This is probably the most popular conversation right beneath Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
Like, literally. And it has been all week, bro. All daggone week. And I'm like, man, this is what we are. And it's to be expected. It's this type of conversation is to be expected until we ourselves just decide to let it go. But again, it's just to start all over.
Yes. And there are a lot of things in addition to what we've already discussed about this award ceremony that people have been questioning. For example, the segment where they have the remembrance. Mm-hmm. A lot of people were kind of taken aback by the fact that the music was not more somber and that they omitted so many people. I was actually surprised they didn't just include everyone, because I've watched these Academy Award ceremonies before, and that segment is as long as it takes so that they include everyone, who needs to be included. And the idea that they would say, you can see the full list I'm like, see the full list of people who have passed away. You haven't shown that. This is the only time for many of them, for quite a few of them whose names we're not as familiar with, but played a pivotal role in the entertainment we enjoy. And you're not going to even show that. I was very disappointed that they chose to take that approach. It's something that should have been acknowledged.
Well, I think all of this speaks to something larger, and that is there is a fundamental lack of respect for anything anymore. We've become first of all, we don't have respect for one another. We don't have respect for people's relationships, our institutions. Everything is old and stodgy, and let's get rid of it all. I was at a classical concert last year, or a couple of years ago, with Elizabeth, and these people showed up at the intermission, sat down, and they talked through the second act of the concert. And they probably got tickets from work or something. And I turned around, and I asked them to please be quiet a couple times. And it was probably a group of like 10 people. They were kind of drunk, and I said it a couple times, and they were really rude. And we're at the Hollywood Bowl, and the idea that you would have respect for the performers or the people around you, all of that's kind of going away. And after the show, there was one guy who was very belligerent at me, after he was pissed at me. And I stopped and I looked at him. I looked him right in the eye and I said, and I brought my voice down. I said, if you have a problem with me, I'm happy to go outside with you right now and we can discuss it. Mm-hmm. He backed down. Because the problem is now, because everybody can spout and talk and say whatever they want online, the actual ramifications of a real world altercation of some kind is foreign to people, because they're used to just spouting off and doing whatever. But we need to get back to the fact that it took us centuries, millennia to get where we are now. And everybody wants the world to be the way they want it to be right at this moment. And they don't understand that we're all living in a continuum of human existence. And, hey, if some foreign leader wants to build up his military and just go into a country unprovoked and literally start bombing civilians, we live in a world now where we normalize that. Yeah, we're watching it on TV, how terrible it is. Well, I'll tell you, what it's terrible? When you have to live through it. And we need to figure out a way to pull back, because now we're living in a world where people are so unfulfilled in their own lives that the gotcha, that this let's go after people and let's tear them apart. It's almost like, you know what? Let's build another Coliseum. Let's bring back blood sport. Let's bring back those kinds of games, and we'll just throw people in the pit and watch them fight to the death, because we're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting back to that, because now you see it online every day, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on TikTok, whether it's YouTube. We're getting to that point. Now we'll just destroy someone's life. I mean, we'll make sure they never work again, or go after them that way, or pile on online. But we're this close away from where someone's going to be torn apart by a mob, drawn and quartered in real life, and we're getting there, because we have a fundamental lack of respect for one another. Sorry. True.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't interrupt either of you. The other thing that I noticed, gentlemen, was that so it's not untraditional. It's not uncommon that during an award ceremony like this, we will see stars who are in their golden years. This is not unusual. We are expecting to see them walk up there. Maybe they'll do something. We might see them, but even that part, where they had to bring them on stage, was not organized or handled right. It was kind of like they were kind of left out there alone, and, whether they had an escort or not, it was very disjointed, and it was hard to watch, people who are older like that on there, not quite understanding what's going on. They were confused. We were confused. We don't know what they were trying to say and do at certain points. And it was very hard to do that. And I almost thought, I understand that they, like, for example, they brought Bill Murray out and he was supposed to say some term of endearment towards a friend that he had lost. But I almost thought that, having it during the memorial segment was not ideal. Maybe they could have had him come up later and he says, I just want to talk about my friend who I loved, my coworker. And then he could kind of have a little bit of time to express those feelings properly. But for him to be rushed into a segment where there's, hundreds, maybe it's probably about 100 people who had unfortunately passed away. He has maybe 30 seconds. It just felt kind of unfair, very cheap. It was not a considerate thing to do to anybody. And I didn't care for that.
No, I agree. I mean, God bless Lady Gaga helping poor Liza Minnelli out.
Yes.
That was a great moment. Well, listen, this has been a great discussion.
Yeah.
But I think that we should. It's been so serious.
Let's move on to the meat.
It was a great conversation, and we'll see where it goes. But I want to fucking talk about Moon Knight.
Yes, I did just want to say that I did enjoy Beyonce's performance at the beginning.
That was great.
It was great.
That was really cool.
Her daughter performing too. That was incredible. Yeah.
It was great.
Amazing.
Loved it.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to see a Moon Knight movie for over 40 years. Moon Knight is my guy. A Moon Knight of series, whatever. And was discussing it before. I mean, I'll say just quickly, this was not the Moon Knight that I fell in love with. The Moon Knight that I fell in love with in the original Volume 1 of the comic that was drawn by Bill Sienkiewicz and written by Doug Mensch was very much more along the lines of Batman. And Sienkiewicz's work, even he told me when I interviewed him on this channel, that he was criticized because he was sort of aping the way Neil Adams was drawing Batman in the 70s, and that the character of Moon Knight, it was Mark Spector who was a mercenary. When he came to New York, he established himself as a multimillionaire Stephen Grant. And then he also he had the persona of Jake Lockley, who would drive a cab to keep his ears to the ground. And then, of course, there was Moon Knight, and he had his girlfriend Marlene and Duchamp, Frenchie, his man Friday, who piloted his moon copter, basically his Alfred, but they were mercenaries together. That was the first Moon Knight that I read. It was sort of a variation on Batman. Then they never really knew what to do with Moon Knight. He was a member of the West Coast Avengers. He had solo comics. He had one of his runs ran like 140 or 150 issues. And there was
part of the Midnight Sun stuff.
Then he's part of Midnight Suns and Werewolf by Night. And then as we moved into the 2000s, there was the decision to give him dissociative identity disorder. And at one point, he thought he was every one of the main Marvel heroes. He thought he was Wolverine at one point, and they brought in supernatural elements, and they made him schizophrenic, and I'm sure that was inspired by Fight Club too, which I never thought was a bad idea. But Moon Knight has been morphing all the time. He's never been. There's not really a definitive Moon Knight run. The people go back and look at Frank Miller's run on Daredevil. Both of his runs on Daredevil or whatever. So there really isn't that with Moon Knight, and he's been a constantly changing character. But I've always liked the character for a long time. So when I saw this show, this is kind of an amalgamation of different eras of Moon Knight history, leaning into the more of the last 10 or 15 years, which I have no problem with. But I thought this episode, because I think that this portrayal of Moon Knight is going to wind up being the definitive portrayal, because people are going to go back and read various iterations of the character going, well, this is different than what we watched on TV. But I have to say, I thought it was beautifully made. I thought it was cinematic. I thought Oscar Isaac knocked it out of the park. I loved Ethan Hawke. Don't know where this is going, but for the most part, I was pleasantly surprised, and I love seeing the character brought to life on screen in this iteration. So I was pleasantly surprised by it. What did you guys think?
Yeah, and I did kind of already talk about what I thought about it. What I was going to say is I did like Oscar Isaac in this as well.
Oh, so good.
I was not expecting. I didn't know how I was going to feel about him playing this role, but the character and at this point, the character. I mean, he kind of walked to work, and you could see like his pants were too short. Like there were high waters, and he has this kind of thing. And I don't really think that. at first I started to think, the way that they're portraying him isn't right, because they're kind of making him look like he's not important and people are ignoring him. But in actuality, I think he's sleep deprived, only to realize that he has this dissociative identity disorder. I don't even know what that is, but the point being that he's going through something. And, if you had dreams like this at night, you'd probably wake up just so, it's a miracle he can even have a job, with this going on. Like, how is he doing this? So because of that reality, and we do hear him talk about the Egyptian lore, and there's a lot to learn about it. They haven't completely translated every single hieroglyphic, and there is a man who's doing that now so that we can, sort of read it in the languages we're more familiar with. The point that I'm making is that he's been studying this stuff, and it's an interest to him. And I'm like, there must be some reason why this Egyptian lore is so important, and why some of the threats that he's witnessing appear as, sort of like symbols or drawings in Egyptian history. And so I really like that they did that. I think they made it look nice. I love anything with a museum, especially the Egyptian part. It looks wonderful. I wonder if they're going to bring us to ancient Egypt, all these sort of questions.
And is that supposed to be the same museum from the Eternals?
Perhaps it is. Yes, the British Museum. It could be the British Museum.
We'll see the Black Knights there. The Dane's there with his cursed blade.
Right down right down the in the next section. Although he works, I guess, in the gift shop or what have you.
Right.
For whatever reason, he's there, but probably because he just doesn't get any sleep, and he has this disorder. But it must be terrifying for him. And he must be an incredibly strong person to have to deal with this sort of thing. This is not easy. And a lot of people would say, okay, I can say it's like if a person were schizophrenic, you're hearing voices, you're waking up, you don't know where you are. This must be incredibly disorientating for this man. So he must be incredibly strong to put up with this, very intelligent. He has to wake up in situations and try and understand what he has to do if he's in having trouble. Like the part where they showed him kind of driving backwards. And
that was awesome. That was a great car chase. I love that.
Yeah. It was. Yeah. But can you imagine waking up and finding yourself in that situation? And I've heard of people, unfortunately, waking up behind the wheel, not realizing they had fallen asleep. This has been terrifying for him, but he manages to push through it. And also that Arthur, who is played by Ethan Hawke, as you mentioned, Robert, that symbol where he's the person who's weighing. And of course, for those of us who follow Egyptian, lore, about the heart, you want to have the scarab is actually supposed to go over the heart. So you can't tell what sins you have done in your life. So once you remove the scarab, now whatever sins you have committed, according to the law, will go ahead and you'll end up telling the person, and then you won't be sort of like admitted into the afterlife or get all the things that you should have. So that's why they wear the scarab over the heart.
Yep.
To block that from happening. Now he has the scarab. And of course my thought was, maybe this person who's chasing him is the actual God who's saying, I got to get that back, because if I don't have that scarab, it's going to cause a whole disruption for me. And, so it is very intriguing in that regard, but there's still a lot to learn from this series. And it was filmed perfectly. Everything looks so good. They did a lot of work on this, and I'm eager to see more episodes. And I'm kind of curious, did they release, like, for the trade, did you guys get episodes 1 through 4 or something like that, Robert?
Oh, we were offered it, but John Campea decided not to take it because he wanted to watch it with people. I'm like, thanks a lot, John. Thanks, buddy. No, I mean, I don't mind. I kind of like waiting for it. I mean, I watched it 3 times now, and for me, and they announced the hot toy figure today, which is great. Although I've got problems with it. It's the plastic, like they've got plastic hard pieces in front, and it's really supposed to be, I don't know. I just like that they're doing it. I'm really excited to get it, but
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Listen, I watched it. What I want is and I'm hoping that they do this, but this is me just mainly hoping. I hope that maybe next episode we see everything from the perspective of Mark Spector, that we actually see it in reverse.
Yeah.
That what he's basically going through, because we know that Mark Spector was the one who talked to the girl and asked her out on a date. We know that actually had to have happened.
Yeah.
So she's like, because Mark he's a charmer. He's a charming billionaire, basically in the books itself. So he's amassed a plethora of money, but he's actually skilled. He has so many different skills. So that's why people pattern him after, a Batman-esque type of character. But there's more layers to Mark, because like I said, there's so many things that he's actually struggling with, not only just the dissociative personality disorder, but also secrets that he's actually keeping and things that he has to guard.
Yeah.
So there's more of a supernatural aspect of who Mark is, in this particular show. So there's a lot to see, where it's going. I'm just happy. I am so happy, like literally, that we have a rendition of definitely we have a rendition of Khonshu in his film, and I'm even more happy that we got F. Murray Abraham playing him. That voice like is perfect, and it's the perfect character or the perfect individual to bring that character to life. So Oscar Isaac, literally, and we already know he's great, but he is great in this like, to the point that sometimes when I see characters, I'm like, wasn't my first choice. I wish somebody else would play it. But when they made the announcement that Oscar Isaac was playing it, I was like, okay, this is going to be good. And then to hear it already, just from the first episode, I couldn't imagine anybody else playing this role. Like literally, I could not imagine anybody else playing this role because he has so much range. He showed, he just laid it all, and to play both personalities, to bounce back and forth off of yourself.
Oh,
that is, and it's phenomenal, and how he does it. But I love the cinematography. I loved how they pace back and forth and cut between certain things. Mm-hmm. Him ending up from one place to another, not really knowing things that aren't really explained, but we know will be explained down the road. I also want to know who he is talking to is something that he's imagining in his head at that.
I think that they, people have seen 4 episodes and they didn't get to see 5 and 6, but I think that the rug is going to get pulled out from under. Yeah. And what I find really interesting is, like, in the initial comics, Khonshu was not a character or even a real god. He was just
a concept.
And Khonshu now is a god in the Marvel universe, in the comic universe. It exists as part of a pantheon of. So, and then it's real, So how much of that is? We'll see where they go. But originally, Mark Spector was just left for dead in a tomb. And Khonshu was in there, and he was resurrected, and he because he was awakened in this tomb, and the moon was out, and the Khonshu statue was there. So Mark Spector sort of gave his life over to the idea of, well, maybe there was some kind of divine intervention, but Khonshu wasn't real. But as the comic book moved on, they added all to that. So what I find really interesting is that, are they adding, like, the cosmology of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? You've got Celestials now. You've got Eternals. You have the Titans. You've got Thanos and Star Fox or whatever, his brother. And then you're going to have Adam Warlock. And then you've got these other gods, and so how it's just interesting to see how they're expanding. Then you're going to have the supernatural with Agatha Harkness. You've got the Cursed Blade of the Black Knight. You've got Blade coming. So it's really interesting. Like, how are they going to expand the cosmology of this? I don't know.
Yeah, and to add to what both of you are saying, for me, I think the turning point for me will be the explanation as to why, let's say, he has to share this body, like why that's happening.
Right.
Because that's a key, let's say, for someone like me who doesn't know as much about Moon Knight as both of you know. I need to know why. Like, why is that happening? And as soon as I figure that, I'm like, oh, okay, then, I can go on with it mentally. But until I know, I'm wondering, well, how did this happen? Like, what happened to this man? Is it because he works in the museum? Is it because he has, how did any of this stuff happen to him, and why him? So that's something that I'm curious
about. Well,
it's
in the comics. So he was a mercenary, fighting wars and plundering tombs in Africa. And he worked with a guy named Bushman who had a skull tattoo on his face, and they were bad men. And then they had a falling out, and Bushman left him for dead. So I would imagine that probably happened. Something like that was going on there in some war-torn country, like in Congo or something, fighting some battle. And he was possessed or something, the spirit of Khonshu came into him and might have caused some of this. It's going to be interesting to see how they deal with
Piece it
that.
together, yeah.
So we've got Kevin.
And I'm sorry, just the phone call, guys, that he gets is from someone who's looking for the mercenary and not him. That's why he's like, they're like, I've been calling you for months, and he's like, who's this? And they're like, why do you have an accent? And
They're calling Mark.
Yes.
Yeah. It's all that stuff is great. And the funny thing is the Stephen Grant persona was not like the Stephen Grant in the show. The way he's doing
not
it.
At all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
So
he's a totally, and that's what I'm saying. Stephen Grant, you know what I mean, is rich.
Stephen Grant is the Bruce Wayne persona.
Yeah, he's the Bruce Wayne. You know what I mean? So it's like, what are we to make him this way, this iteration? And the thing is, if we even look at IMDb, they only actually have 2 of the versions listed: Mark Spector and Stephen Grant. They don't have the cab driver at all. You know what I mean? So I don't know if they're going to introduce. I think they're going to actually roam between those 2 personalities, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, and also the Jake Lockley cab driver persona really only meant anything if you're in New York.
If
driving
in New York City, so it's not going to make sense where they are.
Yeah, I mean, and that was from 19. The first Moon Knight, I think, that was first published in 1980. So
and he was only. Yeah, and Lockley was the only reason why he took on that persona was to know what was going on in the streets.
Yeah,
to know and to hear if there was any type of crime or anything like crime lords, bosses, anything he could do to get connected. That was his way of doing it. So he picked up as a cab driver, as if there was cab driver like taxi cab confessions going on, and that's how he would find out. So yeah,
Tom Jr. Jackson in A Change of Pace says. Tom the Goof Emeritus says, Rob, did you know that on HBO Max all of Prince's films are streaming? I did not, although I have them on Blu-ray, and I do have there are 3 narrative features that Prince made. There's Purple Rain, there is Under the Cherry Moon, and there is Graffiti Bridge. And then there's also his concert film, Sign of the Times, that I have 2 versions of. I have a Japanese Blu-ray of that, and I have a box set, and then I've got an Australian version. So I did not know that. I love Sign of the Times. And then Bert, this is a good question. Bert says, what is your opinion of the opening episode of Moon Knight as an introduction to the uninitiated, especially a character making their MCU voyage? Well, Bert, that's a great question. And I would say that the thing about Moon Knight is I love the first iteration of Moon Knight, but Moon Knight was, as a character, was all over the place. And they kind of turned him into a goof. There's that frame when he's talking to the Punisher that I was looking at today, where the Punisher and Moon Knight go after each other, and he became when they made Moon Knight crazy, which is now sort of the definitive Moon Knight in the comics, which is something new. That didn't, in the 80s and 90s and most of the first part of the 21st century, he wasn't like that. They kind of changed it around. And I think this is a new iteration of Moon Knight that combines a bunch of different elements, and I like it. I think for the uninitiated, what's great is even me who's initiated, I look at this and go, this is an interesting take on the Moon Knight mythology, and I like it for that reason. So I think it's good. Darth Plato says dueling, going back to Will and Will Smith and Chris Rock, dueling used to be a thing. The reason it went away was that the state can have a monopoly on the use of force. People doing whatever they want by means of violence diminishes the state. It's why we have law enforcement. Well, I would go even further. If you could still have frontier justice and pull a gun on somebody and have a duel, and people are killing each other, civilization is all about people not killing each other. A social construct to, like, okay, if we all believe in these rules, we can all flourish as people, and we can have families, and we can have businesses, and we can get. I mean, that's what civilization is. And if you have that kind of justice, that sort of diminishes that. I mean, so, but yeah, it used to be a thing. The guy from King's Highway says that Will Smith, it was a messianic, it was a Masonic from the Masons. It was a Masonic humiliation ritual. Yes, Will Smith is being indoctrinated. Maybe he was. That's interesting.
Maybe.
I mean, I could see
Risk
that.
it all.
Is it Kings Highway in Brooklyn? The guy from Kings
The
Highway?
guy
I'm
from King's,
curious.
I don't know. That's a good question. Masonic, I mean, everything. Everything is a conspiracy now. It's all part of the.
And it's going to be.
Yeah.
It's going to be.
Roxy Logan says, "Thank you, Robert and host, for the great information." Well, Roxy, thank you. I don't know if you've been here around these parts before, but welcome and thank you for supporting the channel. And Mmmm and Lael are two fantastic people I'm very privileged to stream with.
Thank you, Robert. We feel the same way
Bon
about you.
Necron 44 says Hollywood's degeneracy has been on full display over the past few years. They posture with false moral superiority, but display the opposite. Well, as somebody who's worked in Hollywood for over 30 years, I would say that's not true of everyone. And I think every business has its degeneracy, I mean, wealth and privilege breeds that kind of thing. I mean, just today, I posted on a Twitter story about how an anti-abortion activist had 5 fetuses in her house. How does that track? Don't know. So, I mean, our civilization is full of unbelievable hypocrisy. And, why do people get rich? The rich can get away with being debauched and feed their appetites. And for the most part, I'll tell you, I've worked in Hollywood since 1989 professionally, and I've worked with a lot of great people. And I haven't seen that much debauchery or anything. I've seen people work their asses off 7 days a week on projects, whether it's independent movies or whether it's big budget movies. I think the wealthy and the privileged are in every industry, and it's the same story. When you can indulge your appetites, we're here for a short period of time, and getting rich, what is one of the perks? You get to indulge your appetites. It's not just Hollywood. It's just Hollywood you hear about more because it's so visible. Bon Necron goes on to say, I used to watch the Academy Awards every year with my parents when they were alive, but you couldn't pay me to watch it now. Well, I would say this, Bon Necron. The movie that won the Academy Awards this year, Coda, starred 2 deaf actors playing deaf parents to their hearing daughter. It's a wonderful movie. And it was the man who won the Best Supporting Actor award, who played Marlee Matlin's husband, was the first deaf man to win an Academy Award. Marlee Matlin, who played his wife, was the first deaf woman back in the 80s for Children of a Lesser God. So, for as much as people want to talk about Hollywood depravity and debauchery, there's still a lot of great work being done and a lot of great movies being made.
Yeah.
And Coda, the best picture, look at Coda and Moonlight. Take those 2 films over the last 5 years and watch them back to back. There's a double feature. And if you want to know what Hollywood is capable of, those are 2 Best Picture winners that I think are both inspiring. And Hollywood is still doing a lot of great work.
And Coda was an independent film, everybody. And I've heard some of the actors in the film talk about wearing their own clothes for many of the scenes, and how, they filmed it. It truly was, a film of somebody's passion to make this film. Yeah. And there are actually a lot of breakout performances in the film as well that are also memorable. So it really is, I thought it was a feel-good film at a time when we needed feel-good films. And I think that also added to the success of the film.
And also, Jane Campion did win. She was the second woman to win an Academy Award for Best Director. So there was unfortunately, there was a lot of really uplifting moments at this year's Oscars that I think have been overshadowed. Kevin Morales says the way that Moon Knight was shot, I felt like I had dissociative personality as well. I literally felt as scared and manic as Steven did. Thoughts? Oh, I agree with that. I thought that was very intentional.
What did you guys think of that water scene? The one where he's at the fountain. And the one, Lael and Robert. He's at the fountain and he's kind of talking to that structure. He was actually talking to himself, like, how am I going to handle all this? Someone says they want him to take the picture of them. He does. And then when he walks away from the fountain, there's this cool effect where it looks like you're either seeing under the surface of the water. It was so cool.
Yeah. And
it was a decent plot device to kind of, just to see under the surface of, it was sort of like the symbolic of a separation of self between the other personality and, who he is. And then on top of that, I love the shot the structure that mimicked the moon as he was basically
Yep.
walking away. That was
Oh, it's
decent. I
great.
love that.
It's really beautifully done,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think it's great. Bon Necron goes on to say, Bon Necron 444 says, I feel sorry for Will Smith, especially after the whole red table affair. He needs to get out of that marriage, just saying. Well, first of all, Bon, I want to thank you for supporting the channel, on the channel. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. Here's one truth I've learned in my life. You can never understand anyone's relationships unless you're in them. And we're never in anyone else's relationship, so we can never truly understand where people are at. And look, in Hollywood, Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith are still married after 20 plus years of marriage. They've been together a long time. Whether it's unconventional or not, they're still together. And that's, a lot of people can't say that. So I don't presume to understand it, but clearly they're there supporting one another. Maybe he needs to get out of it. I don't know. I can't possibly say, but I do admire that they've raised a lot of kids. I mean, Will has his older son from a previous marriage, and then he and Jada have their kids, and as much as wacky as things can be, they're still together, and that's something.
Mm-hmm. There they are. They're still there. I mean, even though, and that's the thing is, like, I don't pretend to know what a person experiences, you know, especially in a relationship. And the thing is like, at the end of the day, who are we to really judge? In a sense, because none of us, like the saying goes, he without sin cast the first stone. That's just mainly it is. We've all made mistakes on a certain level. No one relationship is perfect. And again, I talk about this because I think a lot of us, and I've been guilty of this a lot of times, man. When I hear about, and we talked about this, Rob, last Monday, like how we dehumanize individuals. Like we look at them beyond just the exoskeleton. You know what I mean?
Right.
We look it's like straight up, like the way we actually look at them as if they are gods or above all, and that they can't make mistakes. And I think sometimes we'll get as much as we don't think that we do in some certain aspects. To whatever happens, we're already surprised. I mean, case in point, I would have never thought that in his career, Chadwick Boseman would have met his death like the way he did. I didn't know that he was sick at all. And I was like, this guy is going to have an incredible career. I mean, and he's going to go far. We already know where he's starting. I can already see where he's going to end. And then when he passed, I think that was like, wow, like I couldn't believe it. How could he die? He's not supposed, and it's because I didn't look at him from a human aspect of it. I looked at him as an entertainer, thinking that, okay, this is what do we talk about all the time? Like, and this is like, we're even guilty of it. It's like, man, what is his name? I keep forgetting his name, and I shouldn't even forget his name. Vader. Voice actor.
James Earl Jones.
James Earl Jones. So we think about it.
How many Vaders do you have in that room that you're sitting in right now?
I know a ton of them.
Come on, man.
I just forgot James Earl Jones, man. Come on, he's.
There should be a James Earl Jones hot toy by now.
Exactly. But when I think about James Earl Jones, I'm just like, yo, like it's crazy how we think about this. It's like, all right, he's like what, 91 right now, like 91 years old. So we think about him as being 91 years old, and it's like the first thing you think about is, yeah, I hope they have him reading the dictionary as Vader, because we want to keep him around. And it's like, yo, we're not even talking. I'm not even thinking about the man's health. I'm more so thinking about, yo, we got to get more Vader out of him. And it's the thing is, it's like, and I'm guilty of that, bro. And it's a shame. Like,
he must be in the Obi-Wan series. They have to have him.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's just like, yo, keep him around. Even when if I think about John Williams, I'm like, yo, I hope y'all guys
lock him in a room together.
Yeah, just lock them away.
What do you want me to say?
They are like seriously the goats of everything that they basically do. Keep them separate from any harm. Take out incredible insurance policies to make sure that they are well taken care of. And I'm like, damn, when I think about that, I'm not looking at humanity the way I should, man. It's like, and we don't. Like when we look at somebody like Will Smith that walked on stage and did what he did, it was like, damn, I never would have guessed he would have did that. And it's like, well, maybe I'm just not looking at it from a perspective or an aspect where I should be looking at it.
But hang on a second. I would say this. James Earl Jones has been an actor for a long time. And the voice acting he did on Star Wars is still, he was a man that wanted to be an actor. He pursued an acting career, and he's been great. I mean, I loved him as Will Greer in Hunt for Red October. I told you to speak your mind, Jack, but Jesus.
Exactly.
I mean, and I loved him in Field of Dreams. He's done, I know you're from the 60s. He's so good.
Yeah.
And the fact that we had these kinds of works from people and that we love something that they've done, that's enough, man. That's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And you want to, like John Williams, I'm like, he should just be composing music and themes. Like, do a Star Wars action sequence. Just do it.
Yeah.
Just record it. We'll put it somewhere else, and I mean, he's 91. I mean, Shatner turned 91 last week, and it's just, but I think it's great that we have these things that we love that people, that people have done. And I think that, I think James Earl Jones would be the first person to say, you know what? I mean, look at the struggles where he came from. Again, a black man, an actor, not necessarily a traditional. He never looked like Sidney Poitier or Harry Belafonte. And yet
he issue that he had to actually overcome. You know what I mean? And he's become like one of the most, pristine voices. I mean, of our time. Like, we just listen to his voice. You can just, he's just that smooth. So
I always say still one of my favorite videos on YouTube is the Vader sessions, where they put James Earl Jones's voice from other James Earl Jones roles in Darth Vader's mouth. Still the greatest thing ever.
And he also has a very well-known theater background.
He's incredible.
Yes, he does.
Incredible.
Yes, he does. I was just sitting up here thinking, I was like, yo, could you imagine? Could you imagine if Rob was the overdub voice of Khonshu, bro? In the film? Listen, and Steven takes over, right? And then you hear Rob as Khonshu say, bruh, put Mark back in.
It's true.
I just, you know what? One of these days, I'm gonna just listen to you talk and record it, and I'm gonna do an overdub, my own cut. Just record it all and do an overdub of Khonshu.
I would love that. That would be hilarious.
I'd like to hear it too. I love voiceover work. I think it's
that'd be incredible.
Definitely very interesting to utilize.
I just put the Vader sessions in the live chat, by the way, so because people are like, what?
What are they talking
about? Bon Necron goes on to say, I agree that there are still good films being made. Yeah, the trick is to find them. I love independent film. I took part in the 24-hour film project. Ooh, that's very cool. I always want to do that. But yeah, I think there's great stuff being made everywhere. There's great music being made. There's great movies being made. It's just our culture has become so fragmented, and people are delivering stuff all over the place, whether it's on YouTube. I mean, there's incredible filmmakers working in the TikTok format, making amazing videos in 90 seconds or 3 minutes. I mean, there's really creative stuff going on. And I would dare say that people are there's more film making happening, whether it's short form or long form, than ever before in the history of humanity. Because people have their phones, they're making all kinds of, you're seeing, the funny thing is that there's a lot of people, like, I am not a genius. I watch people's TikTok videos, and I sometimes just marvel at the creativity and the wit on display. I don't have it. Like, you want me to work on a movie like Tango Shalom, I can put that movie together for you. But I look at some TikTok videos that are 90 seconds long, I'm like, how did they think of that?
Well, I think that they make clips all the time, and if you were challenged, if we had said to you, Robert, you need to make 10 clips, you could do it, and they could be made, you could do it. But something that I think is very interesting to add to what both of you were saying is that animation has had an explosion. And this year, the films that were nominated for Best Animated Feature, had some mature themes to them. Like there was one feature called Flee, and it had to do with a gentleman who was a refugee. It's gotten a lot of attention. And the person that ended up winning the best animated feature made a comment, and I'm not quite sure whether it was him, but one of the persons associated with an animated feature film went up to the podium and said that animated features are films. This is cinema. And I thought that that was very interesting because for a long time, a lot of people kind of discounted it. And we know that this is the truth. We know anime itself has surpassed a lot of popular types of comics and animated features. But the idea that he would come up there and just say, look, this is cinema. It is cinema now. And we can't just push it aside and pretend like it doesn't exist and isn't an important medium anymore. I thought that was, quite poignant to say.
Oh, yeah.
At the award ceremony. So I did want to mention that.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, and look at the fact that Japanese manga is kicking American comic books' asses.
Yeah.
Yes, and with this animation, and I'm sorry, Lael, with this animation, the importance of voiceovers cannot, have become even more important now. The way they did Flee was that the gentleman who had the experience did not want to be filmed on video.
Right.
So they said, well, just tell us, we'll record your voice. And they did. And he told his story, and they decided to make it an animated feature. And I think that that was very interesting approach. But I have a feeling that in addition to, like video, we are going to be having our voices preserved. Even the ordinary person, this is going to be made into a podcast. So, it continues on. Our voices live on, gentlemen.
Oh, yeah. And with modern technology, I mean, imagine somebody just, like when any of us, the three of us, when we pass away, God forbid, someone will have a keyboard and a link to YouTube, and they can just watch our streaming videos. 1/6 scale man, doing figure flex Friday. In 100 years, Lael Rockwell was one of the preeminent people on YouTube doing figure flex Friday in the early 2020s.
In this rare clip,
yeah, it's
we experienced.
It's now 2104.
Man.
100
Robert,
years.
Wow.
Something that I'd be interested in seeing a TikTok video made, although I don't know whether you could, but in Tango Shalom, when Moishi is walking down the sidewalk and he sees some people kind of dancing, and then he decides to join in.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, that would be a very interesting, just a quick, because you're not expecting him to join in, are you?
No,
you're not.
Nope.
And then if he joins in, it's like, oh wow, like you could just see people go, wow,
Yeah,
that would be a cute 30-second TikTok video.
I was thinking about doing that. By the way, Tango Shalom is playing at the Sephardic Jewish Film Festival on Wednesday night in New York City.
Wow.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm telling you, people like to see quality cinema, and they will continue to demand quality cinema, Robert. That's what people are looking for. They're looking for good stories. They're looking for entertainment, feel-good stories, a feel-good story, right? In a time where things are kind of not so great. This is what people are looking for.
Yeah.
And so, it's going to continue on.
By the way, Chris Gore, the great Chris Gore from Film Threat, sends in a very nice super chat and says,
"Hi, Chris.
I love Mmmm, and this is for her." Also, Tango Shalom is nominated for Award This. I did not know that. I'm sure the award must be for best editing, right?
I love you too, Chris. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, sir. Always good to see you. Will I be seeing you at Paramount at 7 o'clock on Monday night?
Maybe.
Oh, boy, I'm very excited. RRTNZ said, "Hi, team. I had no interest in Moon Knight because MCU shows are, well, shit. But I'm going to take your recommendation and give it a shot. Cheers." Come on now. Moon Knight's very cool.
He's going to watch it. He just said he's going to try it.
You should watch it.
Great about this, Lael and Robert, is that sometimes you do need someone to say, why don't you go ahead and try it? See, you might like it, and then he can watch it and make a determination. But sometimes you do need another opinion to kind of get you to watch something, and that's good too. I think it's fun to be able to ask somebody, well, what did you think about it? Well, what did you think about it? It can be that factor that gets you to even see it. So
totally. Bert says they're fast-tracking a modern-day remake of Ridley Scott's The Last Duel. set at the 2020 Oscars, featuring Smith, Pinkett, and Rock. Happy April 1st.
Honestly, I loved that film, The Last Duel. I thought it was
I did
fantastic.
too. I bought the Blu-ray. I thought it was good.
It was good.
Magic Case.
One scene I couldn't watch.
Oh yeah, it was harsh.
Did you
Yeah,
see
it was
it?
very
Did you
hard,
see it,
yeah.
Lael?
Yeah, it was one scene. Every time I saw it, I had to turn it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was harsh.
Uh,
Now all right, since now that we're talking about this real quick, whose perspective was the truth?
well, I
very
think
good question.
that's what I think. There's the rub. I think that we haven't seen that yet. We think we're following Steven. No, we're not.
Because it was like it never answered that question for me. Whose perspective was
Now-
the truth?
Now you're talking about The Last Duel, right, Lael?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Moon Knight.
No. I mean, I'm talking about The Last Duel. Like, whose
Yes.
perspective was the truth?
Well, that's the
You know
that's the
something?
question.
Because the thing is, when I watched it, and no spoiler. I guess I don't want to spoil this. But when I watched it, I'm like, well, we know she wanted a kid. That's the only thing I'm thinking about. I know she wanted a kid. I know her husband couldn't give her one. I don't know. I was lost because I'm trying to figure out whose perspective it was, and he maintained even before death that he did not do it. So it's like, again, they just left that open for you. You just
Yes,
don't know.
Yep.
they left it open for reflection and thought, and I think that the
Yeah.
first thing that I was going to say is that there was definitely some kind of attraction between her and the man who was not her husband. There was some kind of they had a little thing, and people noticed it, and in that type of environment, it made it difficult for her husband. Those are the three things that I honestly think exacerbated the question. And it's almost, I think that the question about whether or not they actually were intimate together, I think they were. This is just me, but I think it was consensual. This is just how I feel about it. I think it was consensual. I know that they unfortunately had this horrible rape scene, and I'm not condoning that. I think that she let him come in, but this is just how I feel. I don't believe that what she was saying actually occurred or that sort of stuff. But I'm certainly not calling her a liar. And it's a very delicate situation to talk about, but it's not the kind of time period where you could just get pregnant that way and be married to someone else and explain it. You just couldn't.
Yeah.
But
No.
but there definitely was tension. The tension between the three of them. It was a love triangle, as far as I'm concerned. And they almost each one of them had to downplay the affair that seemed to be happening, whether it was an emotional or physical. Because if they went ahead and forward with it, it would, at that time period, they could not do that. They could not acknowledge that something like that had taken place. Because they would be written down as heretics and going against the church, or all sorts of horrible things would have happened to them. So this whole thing had to play itself out. The duel had to happen. It was unfortunate, but they almost had no choice in the matter. That's what I think is the truth, Lael.
I like that. I'll buy that. See, The Last Duel got no love when it opened, but it's actually quite a good movie.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's a really it just. I mean, besides one particular scene that I just don't condone at all, and I couldn't watch it. It was a good movie. I was just left trying to basically, and like somebody said, you have to figure it out yourself. You have to answer that question. So I agree. Maybe it is something that, and the way they play it is that you have to figure out what you think. You know what I mean? Who do you think story was? You know what I mean? We're looking at her as a victim of certain at a certain standpoint, but maybe it was planned and she got what she wanted. You know what I mean? So I don't know, but at the same time, it was just a good film. I thought it was real good. I watched it twice to try to understand it. You know what I mean? To understand who I needed to. I watched it the first time and I watched it the second time. It was just like playing KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic. You play it from one perspective and you got to play it from another. That's
I love
just the way
that.
it was for me, man. Like literally, I had to see it from so many different perspectives. I was like, come on, man. Please, tell me something. Yeah.
Well, it's a shame that the film, itself was kind of passed over. And this is a discussion that we have often because so many good films seem to kind of not make it into the attention, or at least in the light span, whatever this view of what should be an Oscar contender and what shouldn't be an Oscar contender. There's definitely a delineating line, so to speak, where there's films that are excellent, but they're just not going to be considered, even though we know that they were fabulous, so it is kind of disturbing. And I still feel that they should have so many more categories so that we can at least, be honest that there are so many more films being made. The competition is much greater. Go ahead and make best comedy film. Go ahead and have these expansion of categories so that there can be more winners and more acknowledgement. That's how I feel about it.
Man, they should. I think they should make the Oscars.
Film.
What's that?
I want to see that Michelle Yeoh film.
Everything, everywhere, all at once.
Everything. I want to see it, and it's not at a theater anywhere near me right now.
I think it opens next week. I think you'll be able to see it next week. It's supposed to be incredible. John loved it. Everyone I've talked to who's seen it loved it.
Chris saw it, and he spoke about it too as well. So
Chris Gore.
I gotta see it.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's.
What were you
see.
saying, Robert? You were saying something about. Was it about the categories or?
Well, no. I'd love to see. They should embrace it and make the Oscars last all afternoon and spend a lot of time illuminating the art of filmmaking and interview a lot of the people to talk about, like, what do I do on the Designing Hollywood podcast? Make that part of it all. And rather than make it shorter, embrace it. And the thing is, here's the problem. And nobody wants to acknowledge this because in America, we're not good at getting to the roots of things. We don't want to talk about the root causes. We only want to talk about symptoms. The reason that the Oscars aren't as popular and the reason movies they don't carry the same place in our culture that they did 50 years ago. Our entertainment is fragmented. It's everywhere now. Just like we all used to listen to the same radio stations. Now we don't. Mm-hmm. Kids today are listening to music from all eras. Sure, they might listen to the new Billie Eilish album or whatever, but even that, when you'd get an album, people don't even listen to albums anymore. They're listening to singles. Albums are broken apart. I mean, gone are the days when I'd tell my friends, no, man, you can't just listen. If you're going to listen to Pink Floyd The Wall, you have to listen to the whole album. You can't just listen to Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. Yeah. You have to listen to the whole thing to understand the story, man. And that's what people just consume things differently. And now there's so much, whether it's TikTok or YouTube or movies do not have the cultural force behind them that they used to have. And the Oscars reflect that. Most people haven't even seen half the Oscar-nominated movies because how do you see them? And mostly before, the Oscars were either coming from the Oscar-nominated films were coming from the major studios or they were coming from mini majors like Miramax. And if you lived in big cities, movies, people would go to movies, and whether they were foreign films or whether they were studio pictures, these were movies that were cultural forces. I mean, when a movie would come out, I remember when Kramer versus Kramer came out. Yeah, which one of the best? Yeah. I mean, people were talking about broken families and what it all meant, and it became part of the discussion. Whether you're reading the newspaper and there was on the op-ed page, you'd have a political cartoon about Kramer versus Kramer, and late night talk shows are doing bits about Kramer versus Kramer, and the news would talk about. So when a movie would come out, it would be part of the culture, and it would start a discussion about divorced families or ordinary people or something like that, and kids that had gone through trauma and need to see psychiatrists, and sons that hated their mothers and mothers that resented their sons, and all that none of that happens anymore. Movies are just another part of our entertainment, whatever whether they're watching streaming shows I can be just as entertained from the Great British Bake Off or the Great British Bake Show. I'll stream 7 seasons of that and be just as entertained as if I'm watching 2001. Now, I love 2001. I appreciate 2001, and I love film, but that doesn't mean that I'm obsessed with the idea of if you have 2 hours of time to be entertained. It used to be that I would I'm going to go watch a movie. I go watch my favorite movie or watch a French film I hadn't seen before. You'd watch a movie with that 2 hour time. Now, I get up and I'll watch YouTube clips for 2 hours, and suddenly 2 hours are gone, and I've clicked between Vietnamese zit popping videos, or I go to some self do it yourself painting a house, or I'll watch a film Courage with Chris Gore, all in the same 2 hour span of time. And I've traveled the world, and it's just as gratifying. Even though I love the art of film, it took years to make a movie, but you're still taking the same amount of time. And if you have 2 hours to watch something, you can watch TikTok videos and find it incredibly fulfilling, or I can watch The English Patient again. It's that didn't used to exist. And now you can pick whatever you want whenever you want to watch it. And so movies just don't have the cachet that they used to have. And until the Academy realizes that and recognizes it, they're trying to go off a model that was the same 50 years ago, and they're not acknowledging that the world has changed.
And it certainly has. I would say that a lot of these streaming services, as well as YouTube, as you already mentioned, certainly has taken the place of network television for many people who don't even, have network boxes. That they don't even look at that stuff anymore. They solely just go directly to YouTube, which might have similar channels and broadcasts. Hopefully without commercial interruption, but the network way of arranging a night for people to watch, an 8 p.m. feature and then maybe 10 o'clock news or something like that. That's kind of gone in a sense, although we do still see some resemblances of that. And, the idea, that they're planning their fall and spring shows and stuff. I think it's the entire way that they do it has changed and had no choice but to change. Well, what I'm kind of curious about is, do you remember infomercials?
Oh yeah. I would watch, if there were goofy infomercials, I'd watch all like half an hour infomercial or something.
Yes. Do you remember how on the off hours you turn on, your local station or whatever, you'd have these infomercials on there, and they haven't really gone anywhere. Is it because, Amazon is so popular and people just go to Amazon immediately to purchase what they want? Or do you think infomercials will still have that clout because they took up a lot of network time? But I don't see a lot of infomercials on YouTube, for example. We certainly don't see them on the other streaming services. I'm just, kind of curious about it because they were kind of very dominant. They could be on for 2 hours sometimes in the off hours, and people seem to be up now. Sometimes.
You see him late. You see him basically now late at night, or sometimes in the morning, especially when certain channels are trying to really organize viewership for that week or during the day. Like you said, the networks basically control those infomercials. They take up spots, when they're trying to actually organize. So again, you see them, but you only see them at like a certain amount or a certain time of the day. Now, but I mean, I just even think broadcasting is getting lazy because they're just showing the same recycled material almost every other day. If you've seen it, if you missed it this day, you'll see it again sometime within a week's time. So I don't know. I mean, that's why a lot of people are going the route of cobbling, which, is buying up or becoming memberships with, certain streaming services, stuff like that. But even that right now is starting to add up. You know what I mean? So it's like you got to be careful even with that now. So.
Oh, and what's so funny about the streaming wars, I was talking to a buddy of mine about this. So there's only a certain amount of households in the United States. So let's say there's 140 million households in the United States, and we have like 300 million population or whatever. So there's only 120 million households that can get streaming services, and everyone's competing for the same households. So eventually you're going to reach a saturation point. And right now, the streamers are spending 100 to 150% of their subscription dollars on programming. Well, that can't be sustained because they're going to one day have to pony up the money for their shareholders. Like, where's our profits from their? And so it's going to have to settle down. So they'll spend 30 or 40% of their profits on shows, and it's going to go way, 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 way down. So it's so weird. We in America, we're always chasing unsustainable models. You can't eventually, there's only so many people here. So you're going to run out of dollars. And then everyone has $1 to spend. I mean, what percentage of that dollar that you have are you going to spend on entertainment? 5%, 10%. I mean, if you're spending 33% on your rent or your house payment, then you've got 66 left or whatever. And what are you going to do with that money? You know, and yet these businesses, they're all building their own businesses to think like we're the only streaming service. There's only Netflix.
Yeah.
What about HBO Max? HBO Max is like, there's only us. We got House of the Dragon coming, the Game of Thrones prequel series. But, you know, I think it's funny because people are going to they churn and burn. They watch shows and then they stop the streaming service for 3 or 4 months. They wait to build up enough shows they're interested in, and then they join again, watch them all for a month or two, and then go to somebody else. I think there's going to be a lot more of that because who wants to spend all that money for all those subscription services all the time if you only watch one of their programs?
Yeah.
So we live in a strange world. Infomercials, they might come back because they're cheap to produce.
That's what I was thinking.
Ron
in more ways
Popeil,
than
you
one.
know,
They're fillers. They're
Yeah.
fillers.
yeah, that's what it is. And I love the infomercials that make it look like they're real shows.
Yes.
You know, like, here we are, I'm Dr. So-and-so, and I'm here to show you this. Let's bring so-and-so up out of the audience. It's all such
Yeah, they're starting to do it. You see it even like even doing like live podcasts or videos that are actually out there in between there. It makes it like it's like a live televised show. And I'm like, wait a minute, this a damn commercial. I just sat up here and watched it for like a good 2 to 3 minutes, thinking it was like some type of show, and they kind of hook you in. So yeah, they're still around. There is, you'll still, especially like the ones late night on certain channels. With the adult content, I didn't even think those were still around, and they're still around.
Yes,
It's
they're
crazy.
still around.
Yeah.
Claudius, our friend Claudius, one half of the official
Claudius?
couple on the Burnettwork. Claudius says, "Good evening, lady and gentlemen. Lael, the last duel is divided into 3 chapters. The filmmakers titled Chapter 3, The Truth, and that is Marguerite's chapter. It would be interesting if there was ambiguity, but it was about rape and her lack of rights."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that made sense then. That her. So because the way it was done, it was like you follow it, and that's why that scene I could not watch. Like I couldn't.
Yeah, it's brutal.
I was like, even when they put it like, I wonder if the decision to put it in was even, for her. I mean, she portrayed it so well. You know what I mean? Like just and made it so believable. But my heart was just every time when me and Toy were watching, I was like, you got to turn that scene off. I can't watch it. Like I just couldn't. And so if you're saying that it was the truth, then he got what he deserved. Like,
Yeah.
he definitely got what his ass deserved in the end. And the thing is, it's like he even wanted you to believe that he did nothing. And I'm like, but I mean, I wonder if during that time, like literally, yeah, nah. Thanks for the clarification. Thanks for basically, because I needed to know which version of it was the truth, and that's what I was trying to figure out, because they didn't bring, I felt as though the closure was there, but then it was like, all right, is there a space there for skepticism of trying to figure out what it was? I mean, we knew her husband, wasn't capable of giving her a child. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was like, what was it does have you questioning the intent in the end. But when I see that scene of her being, I even hate using the word raped,
Sexually assaulted. You could say sexually assaulted.
Yeah, say sexually assaulted. When I see that scene, like, well, is it something that's, told from a certain perspective, and that's not really what really happened? But now that you say that it's labeled the truth, then it makes good sense then.
Yeah.
Like then what we're seeing is the reality of what actually took place, and he got what the fuck he deserved. So
He certainly did.
Yeah.
He certainly did.
Magic K says, since you all like Moon Knight, I recommend you read Jeff Lemire's Moon Knight run. That's a great run. That's where the identity disorder setting came from. That is correct. It is a great run on Moon Knight. So yes, you're right. That is a good run, and I totally agree with you. Ashley Chase says Moon Knight is my favorite MCU show. Very, very
Hi,
cool.
Ash.
Bon Necron says, I took part in the 48-hour film project a few years ago. I believe one of the projects turned into the feature film Bright with Will Smith that was written by Max Landis. So that's pretty cool. I didn't know that, actually. I didn't know that started out as a 48-hour film project. Insomatic says, respect. Well, Insomatic 101, right back at you. Glenn Mark says, hi, RMB, RM, and Lael. Rob, well done answering my The Gods Must Be Crazy riddle on the John Campy show. Dude, I'll tell you something. I was thinking about movies from South Africa that I had seen. That was in the 80s. For those of you, there's a really great movie called The Gods Must Be Crazy.
Must be crazy.
About the Kung people.
Yeah, and about the Coke bottle and all that. It was really good, and I really love that movie. But when you asked that question, that was the first thing that popped into my mind. I'm glad that I answered correctly.
And they made a part 2 as well.
Yeah.
To the film. It was a very popular, film.
Mm-hmm. So. It was so good. I want to say, did it win the Academy Award for Best Foreign Film?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
S Beam asks, when is Rob going to show up on Figure Flex Friday? Yeah, I was there. Yeah. Hopefully I'll have something good to show too.
Yeah, he was there.
Something
he showed up. S Beam. You'll definitely see him again.
Yeah, that was fun. I have that one thing that I have coming that hasn't come yet that I want to flex with. He's purple.
Yes.
He's purple.
Yes. That's a fucking flex in its own. Even looking at it, I'm looking at it as like, yo, that's a huge fucking flex, and I'm gonna be pissed when you unveil that.
One of 30 in existence. DJ N says, wonderful discussion, everybody. Last duel was great.
Yes, it was fantastic.
The lovely Emma Bannon is here. And Emma Bannon says, hi, Rob and Lael. With all this talk of streaming services, which do you think is the biggest or your favorite? Mine would be either Amazon or maybe... Let me read this one more time. Emma Bannon says, hi, Rob and Lael. With all of this talk of streaming services, which do you think is the biggest or your favorite? Mine would be either the Amazon or maybe the Ganges or perhaps the Thames rivers streaming. I'm telling you, Emma Bannon's jokes, man, I never tire of them, but they always make me groan. The Thames, the Ganges, the Amazon, yeah. Q Tumbleweed, she says, you should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself, Emma. One day I'm going to get Emma really drunk and see if she can tell jokes when she's wasted, because I can't imagine what they are. S Beam says, well, he was kind of on there today, I suppose. Laugh out loud. Was I kind of on Figure Flex Friday?
Sort of.
Uh-oh. Oh, no.
Sort of.
Uh-oh. I won't ask. So we all like Moon Knight. Now,
yes.
Now,
yes.
I know that hasn't seen Morbius. Have you, Lael? Have you seen Morbius?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, I
haven't seen it yet.
I won't say anything.
Okay, let me ask you a question, because here's the thing. I'll look at the critic rating, but then I look at the audience viewership, and it's totally different. So, would you, in your opinion, I'm just going to ask you this, and in your opinion, was the critic rating validated?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
You know why? I mean, here's the thing. It's watchable, but we now live in a world where we got Bryan Singer's first X-Men movie in the year 2000. Yeah. We're 22 years into the comic book movie renaissance. Yeah. And they're trying to build a Spider-Verse and all that, and you look at, I mean, it looks to me like you know what it reminded me of, even though so there was another Avengers movie that people forget with Ralph Fiennes and Uma Thurman and Sean Connery, and it was based on the Avengers TV series, not the Marvel Avengers, but John Steed and Mrs. Peel from the British show The Avengers, and they made a movie of it, and it looked like, because this, Warner Brothers the people at Warner Brothers didn't know what the fuck that movie was. They didn't know what the Avengers were. They didn't know. So the movie that came out was heavily edited. It looked like you got like a 90-minute truncated version of a much longer movie. And I'm sure people at the studio were like, well, let's just get to it. Well, the thing with Morbius, what it told me is that the people at Sony that want to build, they basically at the end of the movie, they wound up in the same place they wound up with the Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's like, oh, we're going to have the Sinister Six come. And they're like, you tried to do that already. You know, and you fucked it up with this movie. And there's no, you look at this and you're like, the reason what people in Hollywood will never understand is everyone thinks, you see it with Star Trek. You see it with every other shared universe that isn't Marvel. The only other good one is Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. You have to have strong storytellers that are showrunners that understand how all of these things work together. It's like none of these people get it, man. And when I watch, you watch Morbius and you're like, there is no overarching person going, well, this is what we have to do to make sure this all ties together. It looks like they made Morbius and then they decided to cut it to shit. I mean, there's bad ADR in it. It's watchable, but you look at it, it's just a mess. And you're like, it's inexcusable.
I feel bad for Jared Leto, man. I really do.
I know. And when you get to the post-credit sequences, you're like, what the fuck? This doesn't even make any sense. It's coming on the heels of Spider-Man No Way Home. And it's like probably because they finished Morbius way before they finished No Way Home, and they didn't bother. I mean, to me, it shows why Kevin Feige is so successful. So Kevin Feige produced or worked as a producer on 14 Marvel movies before the MCU. 14 and that's including Man-Thing, which is a TV movie here in the States. But if you include that, he learned what worked and what didn't work. He busted his ass. So when he started the MCU with Iron Man, he knew what was up. He was already a huge geek. He got it. He understood. And that's why it's as successful as it is. And the fact now people are like, well, it's not as good as it used to be. I understand it's not because you don't have Captain America and Iron Man anymore to anchor it. But they're trying new things. Shang-Chi was a lot of fun. I liked Eternals more than a lot of people.
Hell yeah.
Everyone loved Spider-Man, even though it was it was Sony. It's still part of the MCU. And I'm sure Doctor Strange is going to kick ass because and then we got Thor Love and Thunder. And then Wakanda Forever. I mean, there's still 3 huge Marvel movies coming out this year, which is insane. So,
Quantumania was going to be coming soon.
Yeah, that's next year. Quantumania with Kang.
Yeah,
and then I mean, we're getting all kinds of shit. I mean, it's still working. Let's see. Darth Plato says, based on what I've read, the Last Duel's crime claim probably did not take place. It looks to me that the filmmakers wanted to play on the theme of the oppressor and the oppressed class. Seems like almost every movie now has to tap into a social binary.
Yeah, and that's the perspective that I gave, of course, earlier. That Darth Plato, at least I believe that's what Darth Plato is referring to, in regards to the true story. And of course, we'll never know, but according to accounts, that's what they were saying.
Yes, I totally agree. DJN says, reductionism in American culture is hurting the arts, so the Academy is trying to stay relevant. Maybe as a call to purpose. When does art serve versus when does art entertain? That's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. And I think we're seeing a lot of confusion about this because I think that a lot of what executives who are trying to sell stories so that they can be made to investors is people are going to love this. This is going to be the most entertaining thing. People are going to spend a whole bunch of money on this. But on the other end, once the funding comes through, perhaps the studio or whoever is pushing this film through doesn't care necessarily about the entertainment part as much as they care about the message. And so that that it's kind of like a disconnect as to, well, what is the film actually, what's the purpose of the film? What is the intention of this work? If I were someone who solely made work that I wanted to make political statements about, and you knew that's what I stood for, and that's all I made. You know that when you go to see a film made by me, what to expect. But I don't think that you should necessarily, see every single film with that same message, especially when it's not even sort of like what's their passion. I think that conflict, the inner conflict of I better do what they're saying and put this message in there versus what the person really wrote. And
just a great story.
Yes.
Just basically
you can
just
see the
sticking to a
conflict.
story that's exactly. Don't. And when you're trying to, that's my biggest gripe is that when you're writing, a story you're writing, instead of just free form writing, just writing it in a way that it suits the story and it suits the narrative. You're writing where your main focus is to bypass the narrative and suit the agenda. And that's the problem that I'm having.
Yep.
A perfect example, Lael, is Coda. Coda does not have an agenda. They're not telling you that, making a statement about children of deaf adults. They're not. The story is about a young girl who has a dream. And boy, who can't relate to the dream of wanting to be a singer, wanting to go to a performance arts school, eager to go ahead and see if you can have that dream come true. But your family, that's the conflict. Oh, if I leave my family, what will happen as the only hearing person in the family? It was a beautiful story. Absolutely no. They weren't trying to send you a message about, being aware that there are deaf people. No, it's absolutely nothing to do about that. It was just about a young girl and her dream. And it came out as a beautiful film. And that's why people loved it, because it was a good story. And that's all people want, is a good story to be entertained by.
I think about like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Jack Nicholson and Louise Fletcher as Nurse Ratched. So that movie's in basically a mental ward. And Jack Nicholson, who's this free spirit, ends up getting incarcerated in this. Nowadays, they would turn that movie into some kind of statement about mental illness and addiction and homeless people, getting them off the streets or whatever. Well, that was just the setting of the movie. And here you have a free spirit that's basically a free bird that's come in to where all these caged birds are. Sure, they're damaged. The milieu is this hospital, but it ends up becoming a power struggle between the free spirit and this nurse that lords over this realm in only the way she sees fit. And she wants order. And she doesn't want this Jack Nicholson free spirit, and it becomes a battle of wills between the two of them. So nowadays, they would make the whole thing about mental illness and how society's cast these people out. Well, the movie's telling you that. The movie certainly has it is addressing mental illness on a big way. But the story itself is about this battle of wills between these two people and what independent thought has rather than toe the line and be a conformist, and this rebellious spirit of Jack Nicholson's comes and transforms the lives of all of these men. And you could say nowadays it would just hammer home, well, people are mentally ill and this is what we have to do about them. And that's what we're missing. I mean, now everything is about, and what's so weird to me is that the people that are writing these stories think they know better. Yeah, like they're writing a story from their pulpit, going, "This is what you need to know about." Well, in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, they didn't do that. No. Based on Ken Kesey's book or whatever, and you had Milos Forman, one of our great directors, making a great movie that ends up being this great battle of wills. And it is about mental illness and it's set in that milieu, but that's not the focus of the story. And what's great is you think about what it's like to be mentally ill. You think about the hospitals that are protecting these people or they're not protecting these people. All of that's there. The social issues are there, but at the core is still this awesome story about Jack Nicholson's battle of wills against this woman that is not going to let him be the individual that he is and is going to break him at all costs, and ends up doing that through electroshock therapy and all that. It's great. And I don't think, like, not to belabor a point, but I'm looking at the commercials for the new Star Trek TV series, Strange New Worlds. And I'm like, every single commercial is trying to teach you some lesson within the 30 seconds about these people have turned Star Trek into like it's all a pulpit. They've forgotten to tell us a story. Every story you hear people delivering Star Trek platitudes, and in all those character arcs, you hear just terrible. It looks terrible. It really looks. I was like, I think Strange New Worlds could be good. I'm looking at it. I'm like, this is the worst shit ever based on these things. Because I'm like, what? Who is this for? Like,
it feels like a reality show for Star Trek.
That's what it feels like. People are they're auditioning to be on a reality show to maybe they get hired later. I work in engineering, and I've been here for 20 days. It's like I'm like, what are we watching? I'm like, I don't. Have you guys watched any action adventure?
Yes.
It shows at all, and it really looks god awful. I hate to say it, but it really and I don't believe the cast. I don't believe any of the people they've cast. I'm like, none of these people look convincing for a second. None of them. And I'm just like, wow, man, I don't believe any of you. I don't believe the costumes. I don't believe the set design. I don't believe the lighting. I don't believe any of it. And
I wanted to say that, and I need to get both of your opinions on this because, they advertise something as Strange New Worlds. Now, I take it very literally, and I do understand, like, there's history, there's books, there's lore. I understand that. I'm not discounting that. What I'm saying is they're purporting it as Strange New Worlds. So I want to see something unusual. This is just me. Wow. Oh my God. Did you see that trailer? What was that? I want to be, kind of, really impressed with something that does look strange. And I'm like, this doesn't look strange. It just kind of looks like, they're traveling in space. It doesn't feel strange or new or anything like that. And I just was like, well, then just call it, New Worlds, but there's nothing strange about it. If they're going to make it strange, if there is going to be something unusual about it, present that. But I don't think that they should call it that if it's just about New Worlds. That's all I was going to say.
Yeah, no, to me, I'm looking at this going, all of these characters, they all look like caricatures. I don't believe, they're just saying they've cut these trailers together to make it look like we're looking at, it's a Star Trek trope show filtered through modern identity politics.
Yeah, it doesn't even make any sense. The approach and the organization of the characters, they don't feel like a cohesive unit. They don't feel like a team.
No.
It's like, who's playing on what side? Is this a soap opera? Like, it was very kind of difficult to understand what direction everybody's coming from, because they are actually coming from so many different directions.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's one of my problems with Star Trek Discovery. I'm like, you've got Michael Burnham and all the people that surround her. Like, I never feel I'm watching anybody that was in a quasi-military organization at all. Nobody, the way they talk to each other, I'm like, there's no discipline. I don't believe, and that's part of my problem with it all. I mean, people are
I don't even think the character that played Tilly, like, she tends to be the brunt of where she has to constantly say things like, what the fuck? Or, like, they put her in these positions where they had her language kind of questionable. And I'm like, this is the woman who wants to be a Starfleet captain. Mm-hmm. This is the woman who has this ambition. She wants to get ahead. She kind of wants to do these things. And I kind of felt it was a disservice to her, just like as a character. It's like, she wouldn't say that. She'd be following all the rules and making sure she has all her accomplishments, and, everything would just be focused on that. She wouldn't care about whether someone, called her incompetent. She doesn't care. She has to make sure that, she's focused on her goal. So that kind of like snarky remarks, like it's not characteristic of a candidate who wants to be a captain, of a candidate who wants to excel in Starfleet.
Well, everything is so casual. I feel like Star Trek is all about casual Fridays now.
Yes, it's all casual.
Fridays. It's all just casual. Like, there's the DCM or whatever, this giant anomaly that is ridiculously huge is coming to Earth, and there's, well, maybe. I mean, another thing is they haven't quite figured out just how big space is.
Yeah, they don't. They don't understand. What is it called? Orders of magnitude.
No,
they don't understand that.
No. No, I think if you were to actually sit down with a diagram and explained how far Earth to Vulcan is, and this has been a problem with Star Trek since J.J. Abrams took over. You know, the idea that Khan could beam from his one-man ship attacking San Francisco and beam to the Klingon homeworld, like, bruh, come on, dude. You know, and I watch this, and there's no suspension of disbelief, and it's just gobbledygook. And I was really kind of looking forward. I'm like, okay, maybe Strange New Worlds will be good. Like, but it's like Anson Mount is the Starfleet captain that you finally somebody's supposed to be on Starfleet, but now it's all, like everything he says, it doesn't feel like he's a real person. He's just like, here's a Star Trek captain. That's what he's playing, you know, and I'm like, okay, you know.
Does Strange New Worlds take place in the Lost Era, or is it what time period are we talking about?
No, I mean, the Lost Era is between the original series and the motion picture. You know, that this takes place before Kirk took command of the Enterprise.
Okay.
So, and again, I mean, but now that we have Lieutenant Uhura, Nurse Chapel, Dr. Mbenga, you know, we've already got half the crew.
That's right. I forgot Uhura was in
and Khan Noonien sings a long lost descendant of Khan, because that makes sense. But whatever, whatever.
So what you're saying is I shouldn't watch this shit. Period.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Unless it turns out to be
older.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Watch the Next Generation, the original series, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. Watch those. You're gonna love them. Deep Space Nine, especially. That's what I recommend.
Claudius says, I agree with the Academy can expand film categories to include best comedy, ensemble, voice, etc. Disney could stream the entire ceremony on Hulu while broadcasting the primetime segments on ABC. Keep the technical awards, the music, and the jokes. I agree. The Academy Awards, once you start taking the awards away from the Academy Awards, why are you doing it at all? You know?
Yeah, they just built this huge museum where it's supposed to be celebrating the accomplishments of the motion picture business. And people will go there and they want to see things like, you know, all sorts of fantastic bits of treasures and history of the Academy. It's like, without the awards, what is the Academy? What is it? What is that big museum for? Will people even go there, Robert? Will people go to the Academy Museum?
The big thing about the Academy Museum that they've made is they've decided to lean into celebrating diversity and all that. Like, the big controversy is that there's not yet anything about the Jewish immigrants that came to America that built Hollywood.
And it is anti-Semitic. Yeah, well, it is anti-Semitic what they did, in my opinion.
Oh, it totally. Well, the biggest donor to the museum is Chaim Saban. He gave him $50 million. You know, he's from Israel, and it's like there's nothing in because, you know, basically the Jewish men. You might as well just say, even though they're Jewish and they were immigrants, just call them Jewish white men, because, you know, that's how they're perceived now. And what's so strange about that is they did build Hollywood. They literally were immigrants from Europe, Jewish immigrants that came and built Hollywood into what it was. Some of them came from what would become war-torn Europe, and they built something. It's actually a great story about how these men came and created something that didn't exist. And apparently that's somehow there's something wrong with that. Like, it's such a weird thing that we don't want to admit our past. Like, what we can't deal with what it means to be human, and what we don't why is history something to be feared? Like, our human history for the last 2,000, 3,000 years was terrible. We're horrible people. We're horrible beings. You know, and you go back far enough, everybody's been persecuted or murdered or strung up, and I just don't understand, like, why is that something that why do we have to shirk away from the truth? Mm-hmm. It's weird. It's a bizarre thing, and like, it's just I get it now, because now we're living through this very weird period of time where you can't trade one oppression for another, but everybody wants payback, and it's bizarre. Mm-hmm.
But it
Yeah.
is also an example of the disconnect that even the Academy museum builders, let's say, not the investor. This is another example of what I was talking about earlier in regards to someone has this film idea. Investors are throwing money at it. They think it's going to be an entertainment film and it has some other kind of message. I'm sure when this man contributed that $50 million gift that he did not think they were going to exclude the Jewish heritage of the motion picture business. I'm sure he didn't think that would happen, but look at what has happened. So this is something that, I think as we continue we have to kind of check up on these things, and we are doing it. We acknowledge it. I read an article. I think I sent you probably already saw the article, but the point being that, I think that there are people who are making these decisions that are making mistakes. That's kind of a big mistake to make, especially when your main contributor, your main benefactor to the museum is of that same ethnicity. It's kind of sad that do they even acknowledge that he is the one who has funded?
Well, yeah, because now in certain circles, a lot of people are pissed off. I think
Okay.
what's interesting too is now, look, there's such fear in Hollywood right now because who's going to get hired, who's not going to get hired, who can say what, because everybody's playing this gotcha game. You say the wrong thing, you'll get eviscerated. And my whole thing since when did this become this weird fascist state? And I'm like, look, none of these, make fucking stories. Your job is to make great stories and great entertainment. And now everybody wants to virtue signal, and I'm like, dude, that does not help you. That ruins storytelling. The great stories transcend all of this, like a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or another Milos Forman movie, Amadeus. I mean, take your pick. Take your pick about anything. Like I was talking earlier today on the John Campea show about In the Heat of the Night. That won the Best Picture with Sidney Poitier and I think it's Carol O'Connor. I think.
Yes.
And here dealing with racism and police and yet it still tells a great story. Sure, it was literally about civil rights and black-white relations and all that. And it's such a weird thing. Like people are like, now there's systemic, people are born racist. And it's like, are you kidding? What about all the people in the last 200 years that tried to change the world and change race relations and make things better? And people want to forget all about that? It's like, come on, man. And you go back and...
I think,
go ahead.
I think like sensitivity, like we live in a world where everyone is just hypersensitive now.
Yeah.
That, and I think that at the cost of that level of sensitivity, writers are then forced to have to kind of conform their way of writing that, fit certain things within that realm, that spectrum, so it doesn't garnish a really, really rough discussion. And it's like, I really think that, great storytelling is being ruined because everyone wants to check off those boxes instead of just relying on a story to tell itself. You know what I mean? It's like you need to do it within the realm of checking off a box just to make sure it suits. And I mean, we see it all the time. And even basically like it's just bad jargon. Like in a film, like it's like in any type of film, when there's a line that's addressing, it should naturally flow. There should be a natural flow of things, not, well, look over here, this person has this and this is what you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's Hollywood is really, really crazy right now, man.
It's really
No, you're right. It's something to think about, Lael, because there are all sorts of influences, outside influences, that is stopping people from doing their craft. And like even the pressure, the peer pressure that many Hollywood executives may be feeling, many showrunners may be feeling, to do things a certain way is affecting the workplace. And that's not anything I ever thought would ever happen, let's say on a set or in a production, and I kind of think an example of that pressure, Jane Campion's movie, is it called something of the dog?
the Power of the Dog.
Power of the Dog. The film itself, to me, does not necessarily send a message, but the actors who were in the film, they felt compelled to give messages. When it's a film that doesn't actually, in my opinion, have any. It's a good film. It's a sad story, and it stands alone as a good film. But why did we have to witness the actors making statements that have absolutely nothing to do with the film, but they kind of try to tie it together?
Yeah.
For me, The Power of the Dog didn't have any of that. It's a story about a man who has a conflict, and he had to resolve this. It was a sad thing that happened, but he had to resolve this because here was this new person that entered his life, and that conflict was, kind of bubbling up inside of him. I thought it was a very interesting story in that regard, because you would not expect, it's these things that happen to individuals at the most uncertain and unexpected times. He did not expect to feel this way when he met this young man.
No,
He didn't expect that.
Well, what's interesting is then people want to lean into the homosexual aspects of the story, or like with Brokeback Mountain, it becomes like this gay anthem or something. But really, if you look at Brokeback Mountain, here are these two human beings, from these worlds, and they realize that their true natures are coming out, and they fall in love with one another, and they live in a time when their love is forbidden. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about two men that are gay or discovering their sexuality. It's their forbidden love, and it's the society that won't allow them to be free. It has a bigger message to talk about, which is there's truth for all people. You don't have to be gay to watch Brokeback Mountain, or gay to be or watch Power of the Dog to find value in the story, because those stories are universal. They might have, people might get caught up in the fact that, yes, it is representation. It is gay representation in Brokeback Mountain or Power of the Dog. The idea that you can't be who you are and people had to suppress, and all that's good. But the stories work whether you want to make being gay an issue or not. The stories are still valid stories without being like, we're going to throw gay representation in your face. That's not what I loved. Brokeback Mountain. I thought it was very affecting.
Yeah, I love that film
and
too.
It was a great movie, and so sad. It's so tragic. It's heartbreaking, and it's still a great film. But nowadays they'd put it front and center, and all they would talk about is this movie's about the gay experience and being, and it's partly that, but the film works on a universal level. All storytelling, even though it's specific, it can have specificity in terms of its milieu and its characters. There has to be a universality to storytelling as well. The specificity makes it interesting.
Yeah.
And makes it something that draws you in, and you're seeing a world you've never seen before. You're seeing a culture. I think about a movie like Witness, the Harrison Ford movie Witness from the 80s, where Harrison Ford plays John Book and has to go undercover in the Amish community to look for a killer.
Yeah.
And, the Amish community is great, and it's very specifically about the Amish community and the Amish people. But on a larger level, it's about a man from the city. It's about a man from one culture going into another and experiencing an alien culture and finding out, what about me? Where can I meet this alien culture in the middle? What are the things that are similar that we each have that we can share? And I feel like nowadays that has gone. They're only telling us their messages, and they've forgotten to the good stories have inherent messages in them built into their DNA. Now it's like, well, we'll come up with, in Star Trek, for instance, none of their stories make a whole lot of sense. As long as it's so funny. These characters just deliver platitudes like, well, this is what a Star Trek story is supposed to be. And all you get is characters explaining, what does it mean to be in the Federation and all this. I'm like, no, man, tell me a fucking giant space amoeba story. Tell me the story of the Doomsday Machine. But in that story, there's something inherent that has basic human truths in there. Commodore Decker in the Doomsday Machine, he's a broken man. He's lost his ship. He made a terrible command decision that caused the death of 400 of his crew. And he's racked with guilt, and he's broken. And at the same time, you've got this planet-killing machine that's cutting up planets and eating them for fuel. But you still have, within that dramatic sci-fi concept, this very human story of a broken man who's riddled with guilt. Tell me that story. And modern Star Trek can't do that. It doesn't know how. The writers do not know how to do that.
You make so many good points, and I heard I was listening, I think it was the Salty Nerd podcast, or where someone had said that regarding the Q character that I think it's interesting that so many fans are trying to explain it in a scientific term, in a Star Trek term of what's happening in the episode, where someone had said, it's like, God bless them, because I'm like, yeah, that's actually a good idea. They're not going to listen to you, but it's a good idea, right? Where someone had said very cleverly that eventually every thing collapses upon itself. And he was like, maybe that's happening to the Q like their group. And I said, wow, like a black hole or like a star that implodes upon itself. And I'm like, that's so clever. The idea that it would mean that that's how they would die in a way that we could not understand. Right. Or in a physics way that makes sense in physics in regarding the galaxy or the universe, but perhaps not in a plane of existence that we, occupy. And I said, it said the level of intelligence, the level of creativity, the level that Star Trek fans want to enjoy is, in a sense, an intelligence and a certain level of intelligence to it. And it can't sort of like be pushed to the side. That part is important as well. And, kind of removing it from the element of and the way that Star Trek works doesn't work for so many people because it has such a strong science base to it. For that to be discounted, it's astounding. But you can see where it just hasn't been that important in regards to these new series. It's just not the focus. They're still like, okay, what are we doing this week? It's an anomaly. Okay, check. What happens? I don't know. The sun turns blue. Okay. Right. And someone's like, wait, the sun can't turn blue because couldn't happen, like with a fission or a fusion reaction or whatever it is, that the science comes in and like, no, this is special.
Yeah.
You have to go and explain it. And you're like, that's not scientific. That's not based on science, even like speculative science. They could have even gone into research papers and looked at speculative physics and said, well, they're speculating that, this would happen. And look, it was proven true. Someone would look that up. Oh, that's in an actual paper. These are the type of people that we're talking about in regards to the fandom.
Oh yeah, the farthest they've gotten is they've read a little Carl Sagan. What if aliens were they're much bigger than we were? The size differential, or they lived in different. It's so. I feel like I'm watching people that are discovering science fiction for the first time, making a science fiction show, and it's like, guys, I mean, when we can look at what you're doing, we can see, oh, this imagery is from this movie and this movie and this movie. Like you're not even taking from books. You're taking concepts from other movies and TV shows because that's all you watch anyway.
They're like, can we make the Enterprise flip around and do a backflip and a somersault? I keep looking at this thing. Every time I look at that configuration, it makes me dizzy. Like, doesn't it make you dizzy?
Yeah, I mean, who thought that completely destroys my belief in you're looking at a capital ship. It just, to me, it diminishes the wonder of it all. Like it does something that you could only do in a computer. Like, ooh, let's make the ship flip around.
Sloppy, it's just sloppy. I mean, even in The Mandalorian, there was a scene where in season 2 where the ship had to fly a certain way and the robot had to fly it, and it was kind of like, it wasn't as complicated as what we see in Star Trek. But, it was kind of like a movement. It would be hard for a human to do it. Yeah. And so this robot had to do it. And the robot is completely discourteous to humans and says, okay, we're going to jump out of hyperspace now and I'm going to start the sequence. And people are like flying around in the cabin, because, and I'm like, at least they had the common decency to make it look as if, of course we wouldn't like it. And those considerations, those small considerations that are realistic, they're not going to be like, yeah, this is easy. And, no. I think that those small details that we so respect in the series, they really have been gone, haven't they? They're not written in there. It's
No,
It's
and
just not there, Robert.
they're not even writing people like Starfleet is a quasi-military organization. And no one acts like there's any chain of command. People just talk to each other like, Jet Reno, the Tig Notaro character. She just mouths off and says whatever the hell she wants, and I'm like, boy, you don't seem like you're a character on a ship that has military discipline or some kind at all. It's a wonder. Like I always expect everybody to wind up dead in an episode of Discovery because, like, where is the cohesive unit? But by the way,
what happens if I push this button?
Yeah.
On a dare, knowing these people. I'm sorry. It's just...
DJN says business culture is unsustainable because of reductionism. I don't look. I think business culture is fine. Capitalism is great. The problem is capitalism gets perverted by people that are too greedy. And by definition, our capitalist system can work great. But instead of making 20 or 30% profit, they want to make 130 or 1,030% profit. And so they're always pushing to get more and more and more and more and more money because there's no checks and balances. And that's why we need regulation. But we don't have it. Let's just make as much money as you can, and it's.
I won't tell anybody.
Yeah, I know. Who cares? As long as you give me a little taste. But you know what's really funny though? What does extreme wealth really do? Like if you're an individual that has extreme wealth, I mean, okay, you're gonna look at the Russian oligarchs. I mean, people complain about Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, but Elon Musk was changing aerospace technology. I mean, he landed rockets at sea that are coming down from orbit. NASA never did that. The batteries, the Tesla batteries, the Boring Company, he's using all his money to build shit that didn't exist. You might hate Elon Musk or whatever and sit there and go, well, he's used tax shelters or he's used benefits from the government. I'm like, yeah, but he's making shit that didn't exist. He's building industries. I mean, how many people are out there doing that? And Jeff Bezos, yeah, he was a very highly educated man, but he started Amazon in one room. 25 years later, here we are. But it's like, and he's going to space too. So am I saying that's a good thing? Well, no. Well, there's sweatshops in China. Yeah, because we are exporting cheap labor because Americans have priced themselves out of the own. Again, we want to complain about the symptom, but not about the cause. And it's easy to point fingers and be like, our civilization's terrible. All right, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Let's tear it all down.
Your solutions.
Yeah, let's tear it all down. When suddenly, I mean, there's no more, we're going to burn the whole civilization down. We're going to get rid of all of our infrastructure, and we're going to go back, and we're going to live in the forest, and we're going to start over. How are you going to start over? What is your plan? It's like those idiots in Seattle that started the CHOP, during the riots a couple years ago. They went and took over like a city park. We're going to take this over. Well, first of all, the city park was already there. You already had running water in the park there. You already had streets and sidewalks.
Public park at that.
Yeah, public park and power and all that. You already had all that. If you had any real balls, go to the fucking wilderness and start over.
Nothing. Go with nothing.
Yeah, go with nothing. And it's just, it's so weird. Like our civilization's so bizarre. I mean, I'd be all for it. But it's like we're going to burn down capitalism and be collectivist. Yeah, how'd that work out in the 20th century? Have you read your history? I mean, communism does not work because human beings want to succeed. They want things for themselves. They want things. Once you start raising children, you're going to want your children to be better than the kids next to you. Let's make all the kids the same. No parents want that.
Especially in regards to education.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you're a collectivist until you have kids. It's never going to work. Bon Necron says, amen. We want a good story. No lectures, no agenda, no insults to the audience, just entertainment. Well, the thing is, you can address social issues. You can talk about politics. You can talk about all those things. But they have to be part of the DNA of the story that you're telling. You can't put look, like I always say on this channel, you cannot put your agenda in front of your characters and your story. You can't, otherwise you've lost. You got to tell me a good story. You got to have good story and good characters first. And all of your messaging needs to be organic that comes out of that character. Waterwolf 5555 became a member of the channel. Thank you,
wow.
Waterwolf. I
Good job.
appreciate that. S Beam says, I sent you on Twitter your appearance on Figure Flex Friday again. Still a work in progress. Still
Is
need
it
pics
is
of
it
the
your
coat.
head sculpt, Robert?
Oh, is that what
Yeah.
that is? Oh,
Yeah, I
It was a
think
head
so,
sculpt and a
yeah.
leather jacket.
oh, I gotta get it. I keep forgetting to take pictures for that jacket.
Yeah, he showed it. So that's why you were sort of on there already.
Oh, I love that. I like that.
I think once he's completed it, we're going to feature it on PGS reviews as well.
I love it. We got to wrap this up, kids.
Yes.
This has been a 3-hour show. It's 3:00 in the morning your time.
Mm-hmm.
Normally,
So
this is
sad.
when we would start. The whole point in starting at 9 a.m. or 9 at night is to make it easier for you guys. Let's start
I
at
so
7 next
appreciate
time.
it, Robert. It makes such a big difference for me. Thank you for doing that.
Well, let me. Darth Plato says you're absolutely right, Rob. These new Trek series and commercials are treating the IP as a means for delivering messages. If you want to send a message, then go work for the post office. Well, yeah. And what's so weird is Star Trek always had messages in them because they told allegorical action adventure stories in the prism of a science fiction context.
And they never asked you, they never told you what you should think. You
No.
were observing it, and you could
Yeah.
make your own decisions as to what was right and wrong. They were never trying to steer you in one direction or another.
I mean, people always say, like, even when an episode's heavy-handed, like, let that be your last battlefield, where somebody's white on one side, black on the other, and the other person's black on the. Yes, was that heavy-handed? Sure. But what was interesting about that was that the story itself was relatively interesting. The audience is put in the same position that the crew of the Enterprise is in. They're like, but you guys both look the same. And one of them's like, no,
No.
I'm black on this side and I'm white on this side.
On
And
the other side.
Yeah.
he's black on this side and white on this side. Don't you see? And the crew of the Enterprise is like, thinking you people are nuts. But then when you find out that their entire civilization was consumed and these two guys have been pursuing each other through the galaxy, it's dealing with racism. We get that, but it's also the story of obsession and ridiculousness and how these two guys can't get it together. You find out it's so depressing, they wind up back on the surface of Charon and their civilization's destroyed and they're there killing each other.
And the most interesting part about that is that they showed you two sides, and of course the Enterprise own interpretation of this as well. And what I think is very interesting about this is that they chose to show multiple sides, multiple views.
Yeah.
That's why I had to go ahead and do my recording with Mikey Lito over the idea of politicians being in a Star Trek show, only because they decided to choose a politician that had one point of view, and they could do that. But why not go ahead and represent all points of view? If you're going to go ahead and say, well, this person, is a well-known activist with a specific political side, go ahead and bring in a few other options. Make it like Star Trek would be. There would be multiple options there, not just one person's point of view, and the viewer can decide, what, they prefer or whatever, but it shouldn't be closed off. They should have had the integrity to show opposing views, which is what Star Trek traditionally does anyway.
I think that putting Stacey Abrams as the president of the world, president of Earth, was the most of a real low point. Not that first of all, she's not the greatest politician in the world, but it's fine.
Yeah, we're not making a comment on her personal views. We wish her luck. This is nothing to do with whether our views about her.
Not at all. But people are saying to me like, well, you've had you had Stephen Hawking playing himself, so Data could play cards with Stephen Hawking. You had Mae Jemison, a strong, powerful black woman who's also a real astronaut.
Yes, a real astronaut.
So when you have
and
her,
doctor.
and a doctor, when she shows up on Star Trek as a Federation officer, it makes sense. But
Yes.
Stacey Abrams, come on. You're alienating half of your audience right there. And I look at that and I'm like, who thought that was a good idea? Like, who thought, oh, well, let's do that.
It would have been a good idea if they had other politicians
Yes.
with differing points of view.
Yes,
And that would have
absolutely.
been something that people would have been like, wow.
Yep.
They have different sides, and Earth has different, different opinions, different thoughts. It is actually not just one view, but many views that are working together in harmony. Would have been such a different message, especially since she is a political activist outside of everything else. She's well known for that. How else could you interpret this other than just them approving of what she's doing as a politician? There's no other way, at least for me, to interpret that.
Yeah, no. You can't. And it was very dismaying to see that happened.
Oh, and the other thing I want to say, Robert, is that at the Star Trek, I guess, conventions, they actually do bring in real life astronauts as well, that you can meet when you're there.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I'm like, oh my gosh, this person went to space like 8 times or 9 times or whatever. And it's absolutely fascinating to be even able to meet a real astronaut, let alone the stars of the show. So I just want to point that out.
Here's an interesting question. So Ron C. sends in a nice super chat and says, hello, Rob. Good to see you. Hello, hello, Lael. Good amount of movies made from video games. My favorite is 2007's Hitman with Timothy Olyphant and Olga Kurylenko. Rob, and Lael, what is your favorite movie game? Adrian Iscaria, who's a friend of mine, was one of the producers of Hitman. Do you have favorite...
Yeah, I do. I like, I think it's Resident Evil, like the series with Mila Jovovich. And while the stories, they don't actually make that much sense, she's good in them. She
is good in them. I have that box set. I bought that box set. I make no apologies.
It feels like you're experiencing, it's not exactly the same, but it feels like as close as they could make it a real life experience, and adapted to live action. And it's fun. I like those films so much.
Lael, do you have a favorite video game movie?
I can't say I do yet.
Yeah, I don't either.
I really can't say that I do yet. It's I think it's more so one of those things where I'm waiting to see one that's going to be successful first.
Yep.
That's going to have a really decent run because again, they've made attempts. World of, if had it been great or had it been good, World of Warcraft would have been my favorite adaptation because the lore in the world is so huge.
Right.
But it's just the execution of the film just didn't sit well with me. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It was, and it had potential, but it just didn't do well. You know what I mean? It was one of those films that should have been made for TV only. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like literally. But again, if I always say like, look, if we were to get a KOTOR live action Night City of the Republic, then that will automatically be my favorite. Automatically be my favorite.
And they've already got the story there. It's like, go make that movie.
That's the movie people want to see. So
I think
even Jedi Fallen Order, I would add that to the list.
Oh
as
yeah.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
I think the Silent Hill movie, which is not perfect, but I liked it. I liked the imagery. I thought it was fun. I thought it was creepy.
How did Uncharted do? How has that been?
It did all right. I mean, I didn't think it was a great movie, but it did okay. It wasn't huge, but it did all right.
I just refuse to see it unless it comes on streaming. I'm not going to the theaters to see that.
It's pretty mediocre.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. Sorry, Tom.
Wraith X7 says the Moon Knight TV series is partly influenced by the 1986 Moon Knight Fist of Khonshu series, which Rob was not a fan of. It's not that I wasn't a fan. It was just a little bit more ordinary. See, the reason I love the Sienkiewicz Mensch Moon Knight, because it was more like a 40s film noir as it moved along in the series, especially the last 10 issues. Mm-hmm. That's why I liked it. But the Fist of Khonshu is actually, I think I have number 1 of it right up here somewhere, because I was going to get it slabbed. But it's not terrible, but could have been better. Claudius still watching Star Trek Parks and Rec mashup. I want to see First Officer Leslie Knope. Knope, is that what it is? Trying to help new civilizations while Captain Ron Swanson thwarts her attempts and strictly follows the Prime Directive. When they find new worlds, Ron just moves on and eats bacon. That's pretty much what they're already doing.
That is. Mm-hmm.
That's funny. That's funny. Insematic 101 says, I love y'all. Well, we love
Hey,
you
love
too,
you too.
Insematic.
Love you too.
Mike Conrad says, Rob, Star Trek Lost Era was the time between Generations and TNG. Well, the Lost Years was actually, I have the book series, and it was actually between the original series and the movies, at least for Kirk's era. Oh, they did, because I guess you'd say there's two different Lost eras, because there's even a hardcover book that I'm looking at right now, which is dealing with that. Moon Knight was cool, and Strange New Worlds looks bad. Spock's hair, what the fuck, man? I don't know what that is. He looks like he's got painted on sideburns. Like, what is that? I mean, they have never been since 2009. Zachary Quinto, they just don't get Spock at all. They don't understand Spock at all, and I don't understand that. For those of you who might not know, let me break it down. Vulcans have emotions, just like we do. They have emotions. They just control them. It's a mental discipline that they're constantly in control of their emotions. And it's so weird. I don't think the actors, Leonard Nimoy, Spock has a sense of humor. Spock knows, man. He gets it.
But also, Robert, Spock is half human. I just want to point that out. Unlike Tuvok, who I'm assuming is full Vulcan.
Right.
So maybe they would have a different interpretation or way of behaving if we were to look at that.
But I think that Spock, is trying to be the uber Vulcan. He has to be the best of both worlds. But I mean, the modern since 2009, since Zachary Quinto, no one gets how to play Spock. It's really really frustrating. And I don't know what Scott's hair is, Robert. Mike Coonrad, I don't get it. DJN says, we have to look at storytelling as vehicles. What are they carrying? An agenda that tells a particular human experience, or social political ideas at all costs? Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, a story by definition is conveying human truths to the audience through the plight or the experience of the characters in the story that you're watching. And those human truths are not told to you. They're evidenced through action, just like going back to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. No one gave you a lecture about, this is terrible how human mental health is allowing addicts and people to be on the streets. We have to do something about it. No, that's implicit in what you're watching. You're watching all these forgotten, it's all part of that. The milieu is obviously, there is a political statement being made for sure in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but it's within the story. But the story is about the battle of wills between Nurse Ratched and Jack Nicholson's character, R.P. McMurphy. That's the story. And yet all this other stuff is there, but they're not going out and going, this story is about the forgotten mentally ill and how society has failed them. No, it's not. And I hate that. Archangel. I guess it's Archangel 0891. Sends in a super chat and says, give Trek to Tarantino to do an R-rated Hunt for Red October in space with Klingons. Make it relevant again. Kurtzman Trek is an abomination. I will agree with Kurtzman Trek. I don't know if Quentin Tarantino is the right person to do Star Trek, though. It'd be interesting. I'd certainly watch it. Well, I think what I'd love to see is I'd like to see Star Trek, but done like Dune. Give me Denis Villeneuve to do a Star Trek movie. I think
I was just now thinking about that.
Such a good idea.
Just now thinking about it.
I mean, they ripped. Yeah, they already ripped off Arrival for the end of this new season of Discovery. Denis Villeneuve's Arrival. Yeah. So why not just get him to do Star Trek?
That would be wonderful.
I think Denis would be perfect to do it.
Yeah,
because with Denis, of course, that it's very important. Character development is extremely important, but also just sticking closely to the lore that was created. It's important to him. You can tell, like even watching Dune, which I love, and I love this film dearly. But I mean, again, I think in my opinion, he would be an excellent choice to do it.
I agree. DJN says, we agree, RMB, reductionism reduces a regulation. Well, I mean, those are simplistic terms, but, I just think that ultimately we're becoming too tribal. Everything, all of our human civilization has to come out of how do we live together in groups? You know, how do human beings coexist to the point where we're creating a cohesive civilization that allows our lives to be made better and we can explore, and rather than just sustain ourselves day after day, to have a place to hang our heads and eat every day. Human civilization should be more about that. We more than just survival. That's what we do. We make art. We strive to explore our universe, to ruminate what does our existence mean. You know, I was listening to these two women scientists that are in charge of the James Webb Telescope that they're going to have calibrated in June. It's going to see into the universe like we've never seen it before. Most people don't give a shit, but it's an incredible achievement, and we're going to unlock secrets we've never known. I mean, that's what life's about, man. Mm-hmm. And we should be, you know, when Star Trek says to boldly go, they're not talking necessarily about, you know, going off into the farthest reaches of space. They're talking about all of us. Each one of us can boldly go places where we haven't been. It might be the town next door, or it might be doing something you've never done before, but boldly go in your own life. That's the lesson of Star Trek. Boldly go, and hopefully go with your best friends or your loved ones, and go find out what the meaning of existence is. I'll tell you one thing. It's not people talking about pronouns. That's not it.
There's a lot of super chats tonight, Robert.
There's been a lot, but this is the last one because we're ending this story. We're ending this show. Necron's going to take us out. Before there was Star Trek conventions, I met William Shatner at a car show, and he was a class act.
Aww.
And on that note, the return of Midnight Musings, a 3-hour and 15-minute show. I want to thank my beautiful co-hosts, Mmmm and Lael Rockwell. First of all, Lael, tell us, where can people find you online?
You can find me at the 1/6 Scale Man YouTube channel, Instagram, as well as Twitter. So yeah, it's going to be a lot going on. This weekend, you'll actually see me on Collectors Lounge International on Sunday at 12 p.m. So that's 12 o'clock afternoon Eastern time. And also Take Your Position at 4:30. Not on my channel this week. It'll be on Anthony from Figure Posing. But yep, that's where you can actually find me. And yeah, come on over. Membership is up as well. You can now become a member with the 1/6 Scale Man YouTube channel, and it's a lot of great perks, things that we got going on over there. So yeah, just come on over. But that's where you can actually find me. You'll see me bouncing back and forth. You'll see Rob on the show. You'll see Mmmm on the show. So we kind of, we're on each other's channel and showing some love. So definitely come through.
And where are you?
Of course, you can always find me here on the Burnettwork with Robert and Lael on Midnight Musings. You can also find my PGS reviews and PGS All-Star shows also on the Burnettwork regularly. So please do check those out. On Monday nights, you can find me streaming with Lorena Creole, Nina Infinity, and Mandy Summers on Toxic Femmes at 8 p.m. Eastern. During the week on Wednesdays and Thursdays, sometimes you can find me on the 1/6 Scale Man Network, either on Say What or Uncivilized Scoundrels. You can also find me streaming with Lorena Creole. We are doing various shows on toxic masculinity, as well as our Reacher series. On Friday afternoons at 12 p.m. Eastern, you can find me on Midnight's Edge in the Morning with Tom and Andre and Cameron Pasha. You can also find me on Sunday mornings for my Sunday brunch show at 10:30 a.m. on Positive Fandom, my YouTube channel. Certainly do join us. It's an open forum show. We talk about all the things that are going on in the fandom, and we want other creators to come on to the show and let us know what you're up to, and we talk about those different things. So it's all for support, and everybody comes together and talks about different things that are on their mind. It's a good, wonderful time on a Sunday morning. Don't forget your mimosas. Hope to see you all there too.
Very, very nice. Kevin Morales throws in a last super chat and says, I wanted to see a series about Kirk and Picard, the era of Star Trek done from the Klingon point of view. I wish I had gotten that. I think a lot of people wanted a Klingon show. I mean, I think that would be, unfortunately, the Next Generation era, it became really cost prohibitive because if you did a Klingon show, there's a lot of makeup involved.
Yeah.
You know, they got it down to a science. But yeah, I think that would be really interesting. I'd like to see, a Star Trek. The problem with doing a Star Trek episode from an alien perspective, it would that we would be writing it. That human beings would be writing a Klingon series. And I guess it would be cool, but it would be like, how could we write an authentic Klingon series without being Klingon?
Yeah, I think that they should do something like that, and we should definitely learn a little bit more. Not that we haven't learned a lot about Klingon culture, but we definitely should be learning a lot more about the houses and the structures.
Yes.
I mean, the families and their structures, hierarchical, and also some of the wars that they've had internally, and see some of these incredible fights. And you're right about the cost in regards to the alien, the makeup. But honestly, Robert, I think this is the type of stuff that launches careers in Hollywood. With the costuming, with the makeup choices, all this stuff is important to, and I know it's costly, but it is really important to do things like this. And I think that it's probably needed. That's probably the next thing that they should have done right now.
It could have been cool. Well, listen, you crazy kids, I want to thank my moderating staff for being here tonight. Let's see who's still here. S-Beam is here. Darren Seeley is here.
Oh, hi, Darren. And Mrs. Darren Seeley, hi.
And Tom Jr. Jackson's here. So, gents, thank you for being here. We're going to you'll see the Burnettwork will be back online more than we have been.
They're online, like in this science fiction, it's like, on the Burnettwork is online.
Yeah, you'll be seeing more of me again. I apologize for being gone, we're moving. And things are by the end of this week, but I'm still going to be around,
Yes.
And I'll be doing a special show on Monday night late after I've seen the new 4K version of Star Trek: The Motion Picture on the lot at Paramount on the giant screen. I cannot wait. Should be a star-studded event. I don't know who's going to show up there, but if I run into J.J. Abrams or Alex Kurtzman, I'll be sure and say hello. Maybe I'll. That'd be funny. I have no problem walking up to him going, gents, what's up? Watch and learn. See, maybe you can improve your show. No, I wouldn't say that. But anyway, and on that note, kids, I want to thank everybody for generously supporting the channel via Super Chats and tips. That's very nice of you. And memberships. Obviously, if you're a member of this channel, we do have membership calls every other week where we hang out together. There will be a membership call next week. It will be the first membership call from the new Robservatory, which will be nice. Look a little different, so that'll be cool. Yep, so we'll be back there. And I look around, I'm like, boy, I have a lot of stuff to move. But, you just start from the beginning and move forward. And on that note, kids, I would say to everyone, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. Mm-hmm. And with that, I would say to you, have a better day or a better night or a better life wherever you are.
Please.
And we are out.